yeah, it was pretty good.
We all good then? Everyone chilling?
Can say pretty good.
Yeah, everything seems alright. Okay, in that case, I'll let Octavian finish yawning, and then I'll start up. You got Octavian? Hey guys, Tarke.
Sorry.
Hey guys, Tarke Cat here. And before we talk about the 317 stuff, let's quickly catch up because it's been a minute. Raiz, other than being an irritating prick, what have you been up to?
I moved, and I'm currently testing my internet. Why are you laughing at your own joke, Tarke?
Because I'm funny. I'm a
that's
funny
the
man.
worst thing. Oh my god.
Look, as long as I laugh, it's fine, and I'm laughing, so it's fine.
Listen, I've been moving, I've been snowboarding, and I've been playing Lost Ark, and that's pretty much it. I really wanted to do the December events, but the concept of 10-day events, but 7 days apart, turned out to be something that I just couldn't get past. I don't know, the idea of like pushing this rank 1 and getting this and that, only to then stop playing for 3 days and somebody else have like overtake me. Yeah, it was really annoying, and it really hit hard during like the second event, and I kind of like pieced out. I kept playing some of them, but it was very difficult for me to like commit to anything. So it was just like a fun little thing.
Fair enough. What about you, Ziggy?
I played the Delve one, which I really enjoyed because I missed the last Delve one actually due to timing issues. So that was a lot of fun. But otherwise, the December events I think are like a fun idea. I agree with Raiz. It's a bit weird from like anyone who's like competing, the overlap. But I think for regular players, it's probably really nice. Like if they really enjoy it, they can keep carrying on with it. But for there's something new, a little bit closer once every week. So I think it works well for regular players. But yeah, I only had a chance to play Delve, if I recall correctly. I don't think I had a chance to play any of the other ones because, yeah, the December idea is a great thing, but sometimes December is busy and I had a ton of family come and visit for ages, so I was pretty much out of commission for the rest of it. But otherwise, I've been doing a lot of tabletop gaming lately, actually. Yeah.
What
Checking
system?
out a few other little games in here and there. Doing a lot of D&D. We've also played some new board games. Got Gloomhaven.
Very good.
That's yeah. It's a bit of a banger. That's a bit of a banger, that game. If you haven't seen Gloomhaven, they made a video game based on it, but it's like a dungeon crawler. But it's you get this like $200 giant box, and it's got like a billion different enemies and RPG mechanics and like 40 classes and like a whole campaign that you progress through and unlock achievements and unlock new things and get gear, and you just keep playing it. Like it keeps going. It's like a long campaign in a tabletop board game format. It's very cool.
And there's nothing else you need to purchase for it. It's just like a
it's
ready,
all in
ready to go.
All in the box.
Just buy
I think there's like an expansion, but yeah, if you've got someone like that you like playing with regularly, I think it's really good. You can play solo too, but I think if you have someone you play with regularly, you can like come back to the campaign. Like oh yeah, we've got let's go do our next mission sort of thing. It's yeah, huge. Yeah, there's like our DLC. They turned it into a video game as well, which apparently is a pretty good adaptation. But I don't want to like spoil the board game by playing it.
Well, I've played a little bit the video game. If you were like on the fence about maybe dropping like loads of money on a massive board game thing, you could just try the game out on Steam. It's not that expensive. And then if you feel like maybe I'd like this, you can then pick up the board game. What about you, Nugiyen? What have you been up to?
Played the what was that called? Delve. That was actually pretty cool. That was really fun to push that. That was fun. I actually ended up, the dagger, the one that you get from the start. I ended up making a really good build for that with the.
What does that dagger do again? Sorry.
10% crit. I think. So I played Spectral Helix with the dagger. That was really cool. It's just like I think it was just 10% crit and some attack speed and power charges. Yeah.
Like no, it was
yeah. I compared it in an actual endgame build, and it was like it basically ended up performing damage wise as like an endgame weapon would have done playing just the regular league. Like it was as good as any SSF weapon I've had in terms of performance. So it was actually I was very surprised how much you could push that little starter weapon. So yeah, that was pretty cool. Then all the other events, I don't know. Wasn't that excited about them, sadly. I really wish that they've done more with the Atlas. The what was it called? Atlas Everywhere.
That one was sick. I don't know. I love that one. Except the
did?
rewards. The rewards were really weird.
Yes.
Because like Elder was so hard and like Shaper was so hard compared to everything else, and it's an XP race, so you kind of want to be like efficient, but then if you kill them, it's the same drops as like everything else.
Yeah.
So there was very little incentive to actually kill the bosses.
Exactly.
That were like actually fun to fight randomly, but I thought they did pretty good on scaling and stuff outside of that.
Yeah, I mean, I
nice.
didn't really have any issue with like the scaling or anything, and it was it was fun enough.
Oh,
right?
I remember you had an issue with Chevron killing you over and over because she was bugged and not scaling properly.
I was running around, dodging Shaper, having a good time. Then I run into one ball and die.
Yes.
I had 1,000 HP at the end of Act 2 and max res, and I got 2-shot.
Ooh.
And
like
didn't you also die?
750 dead.
Didn't you also die to the bugged Arakali in Gauntlet before that?
Yeah.
What was the bug?
You've been on a streak. So if Arakali had more than, because when she had 3 projectiles it was fine, but when she had 5 projectiles from the Gauntlet,
insta pops into the wall, which just immediately kills you.
The like
no
shooty thing that's like super sketchy. I mean,
she
technically it makes
coming
the boss
up and
better.
it just goes and you're dead.
Oh, that sucks.
She hits under the floor. It was really cool. So like if you knew how to do the fight, you would die 100% of the time. But if you played badly, then you're rewarded because you're actually supposed to stand close to her. So like all these good players are just dying over and over and they couldn't figure it out. It was really fun.
Yeah, sounds good.
I didn't die to it because I'm a noob. Easy.
What about you, Octavian?
Well, recently, like the last couple of weeks, I've been really stuck on playing Tarkov. I just got the game like a little less than a month ago, and I've been pretty addicted to it. Surprisingly so, because I am trash at shooters, and it's one of the most like hardcore, unforgiving shooters on the market. But I find the gameplay loop really satisfying, and I like getting loot, unsurprisingly. So I've been enjoying it, despite the fact that pretty much every fight with another player ends with me dead.
I was gonna say, you get loot in that game? I only lose loot in that game. Every now and then I reinstall Tarkov and I have like all these weapons and gear and stuff, and then I like equip it, lose it, equip it, lose it, lose it, and then I'm like, well, I'm out of stuff.
Scav runs are my best friend. I have almost maximum scav rep, and I make enough money on scav runs that I can afford to die every time I do a PMC run. It works out fine. But aside from that, as far as Path of Exile stuff is concerned, I have still been doing, Path of Exile streams before the variety streams. I'll do like 3-4 hours of PoE, then like 2-3 hours of Tarkov usually. And I've been playing a Shield Crush Slayer, which has been really satisfying. The damage is like acceptable enough for higher tier content. It's nothing outrageous, but the clear is so much fun with Call of Steel, because you get the Call of Steel AoE Mastery, you get the Call of Steel AoE Jewel, you get Slayer generic AoE, and I have a weapon with corrupted AoE implicit. And all of that applies to the Call of Steel. So I just tap like 2 or 3 mobs in the pack with the Shield Crush, press Call of Steel, and everything explodes all at once across the whole screen. It's really, really fun.
It's like 30 seconds per pack.
No, I will often shield charge into a pack, Call of Steel, and then shield charge to the next pack.
Oh, really? Okay.
Sounds good.
Yeah, because I have shield charge in a pseudo 5-link with like brutality support and shit like that.
Okay.
So
yeah.
The shield charge handles clearing anything that isn't like a rare monster, and if I come across a rare monster, then I have to shield crush, and usually they die in the one shield crush because of Call. The one annoying thing is Call of Steel is reflected damage, so it doesn't count as you causing a hit, which means that you don't cull things with it. So sometimes, even despite Slayer 20% cull, a rare monster will survive with like 5% HP. Which
that's so tilting. Yeah, that's really frustrating.
I mean, it makes sense though, because like reflected damage isn't a hit that you're causing in the same way that an attack or something is.
It was always super helpful whenever I was playing War Chief Totems that you can actually still use Call of Steel despite the fact that you can't deal damage. That's been always super nice. It helps a lot with the impales.
Yeah, I was considering doing it as a starter, but its damage for like late red content on trash gear is a little too uncomfortable. I think you'd need to do Zerker, and then that would, the clear wouldn't be terrible on Zerker, but you wouldn't have all that AoE scaling, so it wouldn't really feel as good. So I probably wouldn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
Shield Crush got nerfed, right? In like the
In
latest patch.
The latest patch. I mean, it got
I mean,
nerfed
the
when
one
they
that's
nerfed the
purged.
shield stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
When they nerfed the shield stuff in general, but it didn't get nerfed nearly as hard as shield throw, from what I remember.
Yeah.
You think warranted? Like, is it
Uh,
fine now, or?
I think it's a solid skill at the moment. Like
Okay.
it's good enough as a starter if you're not trying to like compete at the top end or something. Like it can definitely get the job done. I mean, people played it in Gauntlet and had success with it, so it's a solid enough skill in a punishing environment like that. And then does have a lot of opportunities for high end investment if you really want to push it. Like it's if most skills were at Shield Crush's level, I'd be happy with them. Like
Yep.
it is a pretty cut and dried balanced skill in my mind.
Cool.
Speaking of balanced skills, let's segue into our 317 initial reactions. Anything that just like from the first thing, thoughts, Raiz, go. And I don't think you're an irritating prick, but you are a little irritating sometimes, just for the record.
Listen, as long as you don't laugh at that what you just said, it's gonna be okay. I don't know, something that come immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, the Atlas stuff was really surprising, obviously. But something that like really hit me. The thing is, what is it called? The bar for me was really high up.
Okay.
Because people, I don't know, it's like people forget that all of these expansions are always so good. Shaper, Elder, any of the endgame stuff, they forget how big of a deal it is. And the fact that we're really going to be playing like this game for at least a year, it's a really big deal. So my bar was pretty high up. And I'd say they've reached it, but it's more or less the usual, I think. I don't know. Nothing really like hit me as super crazy. Maybe I'm forgetting something.
So, okay, out of interest then, since you say your expectations up here, what were you expecting?
I mean, pretty much exactly this. That's why I'm saying that like they hit the bar.
Right, okay.
It's the usual, like there's always way more than what you think it's gonna be. But it's GGG, so it's still like really, really good. So yeah, maybe that's a bit of a downer, but yeah, like I wasn't like surprised, so I was kind of expecting it. Yeah.
Okay.
How does your Lost Ark hype? Because you're going to be playing that as well, aren't you? Factor in, do you reckon? Given that they're so close together launch-wise.
It's a long discussion because they basically announced some stuff for Lost Ark that I don't like.
But so you've got PoE doing quite hitting the bar, and then Lost Ark kind of coming into line.
No. Lost Ark is definitely hitting the bar as well. Like it's not really changing my plans in any way. I'm still gonna be playing like some PoE and then Lost Ark. It's just that I was thinking that I'm gonna come back to PoE a lot earlier, but simultaneously, I don't know. For me, it's kind of I've played every single PoE league for like a really long time, with the exception of Heist, like literally every single PoE league in existence. And yeah, maybe like taking it a little bit off this time would be fine. I don't know. We'll see.
Well,
not exactly the answer you were expecting, Tarke. You're like, get excited about this stuff, right?
No, I was honestly, I was expecting kind of like that. Because to follow that up, I want to ask Nuggy the same thing, because I know that Nuggy had a similar thing with like Lost Ark. How did the 317 expectations hit you? And as Ziggy said, how's that compare to the Lost Ark stuff?
Okay, so whenever I get presented with something exciting, nothing else matters in my mind. I'm very simple-minded in that way. If you show me something exciting in front of me, I'll get super excited about it in that moment. So when I was watching PoE, I was watching PoE. I didn't have all sorts of other things in mind at the time. And I don't know. This was just really good. Like everything. Themes and colors, and I liked that. So I think two things struck me from the expansion stuff. One is that it seems that they listened, like they actually listened, and it really shined through. I was like, oh, that felt good. I was just like, this feels good. Yes. Oh, this is, it was just like a lot of, this is a Good reveal. I like this. And then following that, we get like 3 endgame things to push for now
Yes.
instead of 1. I think it's very exciting, actually. So, like, you're not just doing Awakener. You're doing one of the 2 or Maven, right? So Maven was like, I don't know, Maven and Awakener, since they were like released apart, and you're in that cycle. I don't know if they really felt that. I feel like maybe people didn't even do that much Maven. Maybe they'll get more comfortable with it this time. I don't know. At least Maven is more exciting now because of Awakened Gems farming place now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I
And they buffed
really
the
like.
uniques that she has.
Yeah.
They buffed the uniques that she has.
I mean, did they though?
Seems
A doppelganger's
alright.
guys gives like 40%
Yeah.
less physical
Doppelganger.
damage taken now.
If you
Yeah,
can take
I
advantage of
mean,
that,
It's
seems
kind
really
of
good.
gross.
Yeah, but that was already like a good item, you know. Like
Okay, but
the red
made it
ring
better.
was good
It's
too.
more reason to kill Maven.
And
The red ring is nice as well, but then everything else is kind of like. I get when Chris said that it was last minute.
I
get
think-
that.
you also
think
need to keep in
the-
mind, though, Sir Octavian, is that not only did they buff that, but there's also the new Orb System, where like it improves the implicits of the other ones, and that seems way more accessible than the old Maven Cirrus stuff with like that influence, because that seemed super like extreme endgame craftery, whereas this seems like it's more approachable on like the average person might actually use this currency sort of level. Go on, Octavian.
How so though? How is it? You mean more approachable? As in more usable, or like more acquirable?
More usable. So it's one of those things of, it seems I could be wrong, we'll have to see what the availability is like, but it seems like a big focus of this new influence system is you've got a pretty good rare, maybe it's like a nice incursion rare or something you got off Rogue. Okay, add some influence on it. Oh, you got this influence, you've got some good stuff on there. Okay, so it's a situation of you can use good enough items, and it's not a situation of, okay, I need to get my perfect influence item that I've spent all this currency on. This other one, I've then slammed them together with an Awakener Orb. Now I'm going to use the Maven thing, and it's going to either like make that better, or completely brick it, I'm going to start again from scratch. Because the Maven stuff only affects the implicit, it means the rare item, it means you can treat every single mod as like a fractured. It's not going to like brick the item.
One of the things that has been almost universally maligned about Path of Exile's crafting system is the feeling that you come to like a standstill with things, where you get a very nice item that isn't, it's not done, it's not perfected, but it's a rather nice item and it does what you need, and you don't want to mess with it anymore because you might ruin it. It's very, very easy to ruin it. And it seems like, and one of the things people almost universally liked about Harvest was the fact that you could keep tweaking things and keep working on an item, and it gave you a real attachment to that item. So it seems like they took that to heart with the new crafting system. And they haven't made it, super deterministic. You do have to roll still somewhat randomly, sort of like alteration level of randomness, to find the mods you want. But you never actually brick the thing.
Yes.
You can keep on trying, and you can keep on working towards improvement. And even if you find like a lowish version of what you want, you can then use other systems to improve it. I think it's way better and way, way more friendly to the player.
And also on that, you can use the item while you're crafting it, which is such a massive thing. Because a big thing you have with PB currently, with the old system, is kind of like, you have to have the bow you're currently using or the chest you're currently using, and then like an almost identical copy that's what you're then messing around with. With this new system, you can just add one of the new influences on, and you can still use the item afterwards. And likewise, when you then do the Maven thing, it just puts one tier up, one tier down. So even if it picked the worst one, it's like, oh no, I've lost like 5 dot multi. Like, who cares?
We're
Yeah,
seeing
I
our
just-
first.
I mean, I just worry about like the accessibility. I think the ideas are really great, and I think what you guys talked about is really meaningful to not have that like, yeah, this item's bricked and that's that. I just worry about the fact that you've got 3 different influences and you have to like choose one on the device now. And you guys ever do that thing where like you want to not witness a boss with Maven, so you'll take Maven off, and then like 4 maps later you realize that you haven't been Mavening? I feel like I'm gonna be doing that a lot with these, like switching them around and all this stuff. And like I just don't know how much meaning there's gonna be to actually doing Maven versus like focusing on this other stuff, since you can't do it all at once.
Well,
That's kind of a concern.
we can circle back. That's a bigger topic. What were you going to say, Ziggy?
So I have a few initial things. So like you guys were just talking about the crafting side of things, and that's one big part of it. Is like I feel like this is the first solid example of an implementation of harvest style stuff that GGG is comfortable implementing, and that's pretty exciting to finally start to see a bit of that, because we've been asking, oh, you know, when are you guys going to add something like this, or can we have some sort of like harvest love back? And they've been kind of just saying, well, here's the things we don't like about harvest, here's why, you know, we had to nerf it, here's why we had to take a lot of this away, but we didn't really get any examples of what they actually wanted to put in the game. But now they're starting to add some of this stuff in a way that they like. So that's cool to see. And I like what I'm seeing so far with the Chaos Orbs, the Exalts, the semi-targeted annuls, as well as the implicits, which is kind of like an evolution of the corruption system from this league, with changing implicits and changing items, but also where you guys were talking about a little bit touched on was the idea that you're able to constantly keep evolving and improving your gear. And that kind of segues into another thing that I really like thematically about this entire like expansion reveal is GGG is showing a very strong trend towards scaling towards the actual player base and not just, you know, the very small percentage of things, because historically Path of Exile has really catered to the very small percentage of players. It was really indicative, it was really like strongly present in the Atlas system, and big complaints about how all the interesting stuff didn't kick into gear until way late, way too late, beyond the point where a lot of people just stop playing, or most players stop playing before it starts to get good. Now we've got an Atlas system that it seems like will start kicking into gear right from the first map. You get your first passive. Like, sure, some of the big stuff will still be later on, but you'll be actually feeling like a smooth progression towards things getting more and more interesting. And then you've got a similar system now with the implementation, instead of, say, a Maven Orb, which is like way beyond what most people use, even like a lot of people who play the game full time. And now you've got a new crafting system that comes along with this one, where they've got tiers of that crafting system. So you've got the really common ones that you can find, so everyone can slap an implicit with the new influence system and get a taste of that system early on as an introductory hit. And then later on, you've got the progression. So we've seen that with the Atlas, a smooth progression of the core systems, which is much easier for the wider player base to get into. You've got a smooth progression of the passives unlocks. You've got a smooth progression of the crafting. Like, this is all really good stuff. I feel like it feels very much like they've like listened to a lot of what we've been talking about over the past year.
Even smaller stuff like the Kirak change sort of is in line with that, where you're going to get these interesting missions from Kirak earlier than you would get the, you know, because previously Zana would just give you basic maps earlier, and then in the end game you get like the bosses and stuff, and Kirak will now maybe give you breach stones early on, or give you, you know, really interesting missions with super valuable league mechanics in them early on.
And I think another thing which is important, picking back off what Ziggy said, is something that I've experienced. And I spoke about this in my 3-7 reaction. A lot of people echoed this thought in the comments. A lot of the time in Path of Exile, as Ziggy said, it's kind of like you have to build to, like, I've unlocked all my Maven stuff, and now the game is fun. Like, now the game starts. With this new passive system, with it being drip fed so quickly, it gives you a reason to log in the next day. And it's like, even if you only played for a couple of hours, like, well, you got another passive point. So, you know, you're constantly getting that reason to continue playing. And then as you're progressing, like the red guy, and getting the passive points from doing the red guy, you're getting the red orbs. So it's like, oh, I'm now putting these on my gear. So now my gear is improving ever so slightly. And you're like, oh, let's go unlock my passives from the blue guy. You run the blue guy, you're getting your passive on your Atlas, and you're getting the blue orbs. Oh, we're going to add those onto my gear. And then suddenly you're, after like a week or two, or however long it takes you, you're like, oh, I've got all this red and blue influence on my gear. I've unlocked loads of passives. I haven't got my Maven passives yet. You run some Maven passives, then you get the orbs that then interact with that stuff. And it's very deterministic. So as you said, like, why would I ever really want to do Maven? You know, if I'm trying to like rush down the red guy first because I want his influence, I can farm him until I've got all of that influence that I'm happy with, except on my gear. Do the same for the blue guy, and then I can farm Maven to try and get the upgrades. And while I'm doing that, I'm also getting Awakener gems. I'm maybe getting some cool new uniques. And as long as they can keep that like balance going, that'll be really good. And that's just from an SSF point of view. From a trade league point of view, it's also kind of interesting, because it might be a thing where maybe the blue side is considered more profitable, but then that means the red orbs are more valuable because less people are running them. Maybe no one's running Maven, so suddenly Maven becomes way more valuable. And because there are passives tied into all of this stuff at the same time, there's always a reason to dip your toes into it. And if you're someone who hates Maven content, you're like, I never want to do Maven content, you can still engage meaningfully with the Atlas skill tree, just getting your passes from the red and the blue sides, just by running that base content. So I think that's really good, because I think that's one complaint I have seen is some people saying that they really don't like the Maven boss fight, and they don't like how like the Maven is more like core to the game now. But I think if you're just running like Maven invitations, you like, I don't think you'll be like, you have to kill Maven. I don't think that's going to be a thing, but I don't know.
I mean, if you want to max out all of your possible passive points, then
yes, obviously.
eventually
Yeah.
you do. But
it's like less than
given
10%
that-
of your total passives for that.
yeah,
Exactly.
so it's unlike the previous system where there were fewer passives and they were more impactful. Since there's 120 something passives now, losing 4 or 5 is perfectly reasonable. You probably will be fine. I have 2 small concerns. One, I really hope orbs I've been making are more common, or
Yes.
there's some other way to respec the Atlas tree. I don't remember whether you touched on this in your Q&A, Ziggy, or
We
not.
did, yeah.
yeah.
We said that there would be a global drop now, so presumably
They
that comes
were
along with
already, though.
a common boost.
Oh, they were a
Yeah.
global drop already. I don't know if he said that they were going to get boosted in
Not going to be more common.
Dumpster upgrade. I mean,
Yeah.
I hope so. I hope
I
they
think
are
I
rather.
think that's
I mean,
what they
he said,
meant.
he said
but
that,
yeah.
basically. And also, you
Um,
can farm them through Betrayal if you ever run out.
That's true. Yeah, they did add. I forget who it was, but they added somebody in like
Yes.
fortification. I think it was that drops them. I'd have to look at the patch notes to know for sure. And my second worry is, well, it's not so much a worry, but it's just kind of an observation. The drops from Maven fights and like both the 10 ways and the Maven fight itself and stuff are going to have to be tuned up a bit, and I think they are with Awakened Gems and all that, because I think you only get influence monsters in your maps when you're doing the red or blue guy. Because Maven doesn't have influence mobs.
That was one thing that did stand out as a bit odd to me, because not only that, you get the shrine things that you can interact with when you're doing the red and the blue stuff. I don't know if Maven's going to have that. Do you know about that, Ziggy?
The shrine things?
Like, it shows you, like, as you're running the maps, there are those shrines that you can click on to either, like, upgrade the map drops or, like, the boss drops. And I think that's only tied to the 2 new pinnacle bosses. I don't know if Maven has an equivalent.
I actually have no idea what you're talking about.
Have I made up
Shrines?
I haven't made up a mechanic.
No.
have I?
This is a thing.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
I
a-
vaguely
no,
remember from the video what you're talking about.
I'm not
because
100% sure how that system works.
And this
Yeah,
isn't the
they
league
touched on
mechanic.
it.
I'm not talking about Archnemesis. They're called like altars. I'm not
Yeah.
talking about Archnemesis.
It was
If you
a
go
little
back-
like it was a little circular piece of UI that was
Yeah.
split in half with red on
Yeah.
top and blue in the bottom or something.
Okay.
I don't
Yeah,
remember.
and you
specifics.
choose to like upgrade the boss to drop
Yeah.
like the.
But yeah, I think if that's a little out of whack, if it's out of tune, and you get like tons of extra monsters in the influence maps, it may be that the softcore meta for mapping trends in the direction of only doing the red or blue guy and skipping over Maven. As particularly if you can get really good methods of juicing your maps through the void stones and through the Atlas tree, then just having billions and billions of monsters per hour, a bit exaggeratory there, is probably going to outperform the RNG gamble of doing Maven fights.
To quote someone who copied the text in from chat, boss drops Eldritch Orb, boss damage now shock. So it's like you interact, it's like a roguelike kind of system. You interact with the boss in some way to get something out of it. Also, one thing, since I've seen quite a lot of confusion around the Void Stones, so you get 1 from killing Maven, 1 from killing the red guy, 1 from killing the blue guy, 1 from killing Uber Elder. You don't need all 4 to get tier 16s. With no Void Stones, you have tier 16s on your Atlas. I've seen a lot of people thinking you have to have all 4 to get them. The Void Stone just upgrades your Atlas. So if you want every map on your Atlas to be a tier 16, then yes, you need to kill Maven. But
if you want the bottom to be 16, you need all 4.
Yeah.
Yep.
This
Yeah.
goes top down.
But my point being, and you might disagree, but like, if you're the kind of person who's worried about never being able to kill Maven, I don't think you need your entire Atlas to be tier 16 maps. I think having 3/4 of your Atlas being tier 16 maps is plenty fine, especially with the new favored map system.
A valid point of discussion that's coming up out of this, though, is a lot of people are pointing out that Sextant's now gated behind that. So if you
That is true.
Sextants on your maps, you do need to get your 4 Void Stones, and since there's no uniques or anything, you can't like substitute with those. Personally, I don't give a fuck. I kind of hate Sextants, and I kind of hate updating them and stuff like that. Like the juice that they apply on maps, but the process of doing it. It's kind of annoying. So it seems like they've taken this mechanic as like a juicing mechanic and shifted it all the way to the late game. But I also understand other people who did use sextants earlier than that, which is only when I really used them.
I
But,
wouldn't be surprised if, for the average player, maps are equally as dense as they were before, or denser on average, depending on how often you were using sextants. But if you're someone who, you know, was just throwing on sextants now and again when you drop them, or not even bothering to slap them on, then being able to select red or blue and getting essentially guaranteed influenced monsters, as well as having a much more expanded Atlas tree, and having Kirak, who offers much better and more high value maps to run than Zana used to, you're getting a lot of free content. And I don't know. I also don't really like rolling sextants, so I don't really care. But I can see why it would be frustrating to someone who wanted to do wants to only ever do maximum juice, which Path of Exile certainly has a portion of the player base who are just, you know,
only they want to do really giga juicing once you've done all your progression anyway, right? Like once you've unlocked all the things that you can juice with. So it doesn't really affect those players. It's more just the people that did sextant early on, which not necessarily, I didn't really, because I saved them until later when I had all the juice. Something someone just pointed out in chat that I love is they reminded me that we no longer have to do prophecies or sextants for the most part while mapping. How good is that?
Scarabs, like the only thing. And I mean, you can still buy scarabs and throw them in if you want.
And also another thing is, if you're worried about not being able to have your entire Atlas as tier 16 and having all the sextants unlocked so you can giga, if you're at that level economy, you could buy a boost. Like that.
I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people making.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of money in
skills.
that. Yeah.
It's a good league for it.
Yeah.
Selling Uber Elder kills and stuff like that. Yeah.
I really like, since we've touched on it a little bit, I really like the new Kirak system, because the Zana system was so, especially since like when Maven no longer, when Favor no longer existed, there was like touch the Watchstones. It's like,
also,
well, why? Like,
I wish I'd been able to get this question to you in the Q&A, Ziggy, but the fact that you're like talking to Kirak in your map device and like opening the map from there and not in the map makes me think maybe there's a chance it could be witnessed by Maven. But we don't have that information. I am not sure. Because like you're not opening it in the map anymore. It's going through the map device, right?
Wait, what could be witnessed by Maven?
Kirak missions as opposed to Zana missions.
Oh,
so like a really frustrating thing before in Soul Self-Found is if you're trying to like do fear,
you got like Cortex or something,
and you find a Cortex, but it's Zana offering it to you, you can't have it witnessed.
Yeah.
But now, since Kirak is through your hideout and theoretically then through your map device, it could maybe be witnessed.
So do we not find him in maps ever then, you reckon?
No,
like, because we get the scouting reports now instead.
He doesn't show up in maps ever, but they compensated for that by making it more likely that you get a mission from killing the boss, and then also scouting reports exist.
Yeah, the scouting reports are really cool.
Yeah, that is good. I like that.
Yeah. One quite valid complaint I've seen, and obviously we're going to have to wait until we get the full Atlas skill tree info in the next couple of days, which I think is probably a valid concern for a very niche portion of the player base, but it's this idea of, with the current system, yes, you're gated into regions, but you kind of get access to like giga juicing nearly every mechanic. Like, you know, you can juice the hell out of 2 mechanics in each region, whereas this new Atlas thing, I mean, we don't know how easy it's going to be to math it all out. You're probably going to only be able to focus on maybe like, what, 4, 3, I don't know, but like just...
Yeah, I've thought about this. I expect that you will have a fewer of the mechanics focused in.
But stronger.
Like it's probably... I don't know. We'll have to see what the passives look like. But I always felt like there was at least several regions that I didn't really care about the thing that I had focused in that region. And I think the trade-off of like not having to remember which region you're in, what thing you're supposed to be juicing, what scarabs you're throwing in this one, because what passives are in this one. This is the best area zone. Oh, but it's the other best area zone that had the stuff that I wanted and all that stuff. I think the trade-off of not having to worry about any of that now and actually just knowing that your passives that you have spec'd apply to everything is such a good trade-off though.
No, I
losing maybe a couple things.
You think they're going to be weaker on the passives? I think
individually,
but combined, no.
Combined, I think it's going to be way stronger. That's my thought. I think it's going to be way stronger, and I think they can allow that because that you don't have rollable watchstones. Like, so basically, all the rollable watchstone stuff that people were using through basically just becomes passives instead,
And
like in
thank
power.
God, I hate clicking alteration orbs on
Yeah.
watchstones. Thank
Oh,
God.
it's terrible.
Thank God that is
Oh
good.
my God.
Oh my goodness.
Another thing which is cool about that is you can now focus more so on league mechanics with like cross synergy, which you couldn't do before if they were tied to different regions. So I'm trying to now think of what an example of, like, maybe if you had a build that was really good, for example, at stuff like Legion or Breach and Blight, then you could spec into those three and then not spec into ones that you're not good at, or like rolling like additional monsters, drop whatever, and that is a really cool aspect of it. Going back to the regret thing, which we'll have to see how like common it is. Do we think there is an issue associated with the fact that if you want to do like a full respec, you're now like respecking 100 orbs or something mad compared to the old system where it's like 5
Reminds
points
me
or
of
something?
something. It reminds me of something that already exists.
What, like maybe some kind of like skill tree? But the main difference the main difference being though is this is account bound, not character bound, right? So there isn't that issue of like, oh, I messed up my first character, I'll level a new one. Whereas this one, it's like, oh, I messed up my first Atlas, let me buy 100 regrets. And also you're going to have the issue in a trade league that if it's super profitable to doing mass swapping, you'll have people like Grimro or MP or whatever who are like mass buying so they can do these crazy respecs like twice a week, which will then potentially price out the average person from fixing their mistakes. I don't know.
That's why I was so surprised during the Q&A that Chris didn't immediately pounce on that. Because the second I saw it, my very first words were, I hope we can really like respec this. And then during the Q&A, he was like, oh yeah, you can respec it. Like he wasn't, I don't know, it made it seem, at least to me, that it's not going to be very respecable. And I think that would be a massive mistake.
My impression is that it follows the current thinking towards the passive trees where small corrections are quite doable and a medium correction or a large correction is expensive / time consuming. I'm thinking it's that.
I think that's a
for
bad
this as
idea.
well.
Yeah.
I think that's a bad way of looking at it because it ties back to, I don't know, you guys remember when people did
like shaped Atlas stuff?
Yes. And the thing is, if you started to fill your map a little bit too much and you had to sexton, what was that thing? Unmaking orbs?
No, that's the current one.
Were they not
seals,
called that?
Cartographer seals?
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Was it seals? Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, you would like, especially if you had to do red maps and you had to, how many was it? It was like, oh my God.
I vividly remember it was the first league I was playing that system because I think I skipped the league that first came out and I came back the next time and I realized that I'd messed up my, and I know this is a min-max problem because in reality you're still playing it, still profitable, but in my mind I was like, oh, I've messed up. And I worked out how many exalts it would cost me to fix it, and I'm like, no, this is just fucked for the rest of the league. This is too expensive.
I think people quit over it. The simple fact is that if you cannot completely revert your mistakes, if you've made some big mistakes, it's not like just starting a new character.
Yeah.
It's like your progression is halted. You might have spec'd into something that your next character doesn't deal with very well, and you're just sitting there being like, what have I done? Right? I guess there's next league.
I think it's also like beneficial to the game and to the developers to allow players to like pursue a variety of content relatively easily. You know, because then people will continue playing if they get bored of one kind of thing. Like if you have a strategy where you're hard farming, let's say Harvest or hard farming Jun or something, and you do that until you get your upgrade that you were really, really hoping for, you're probably sick of it at that point. And I at least have the experience where I'll get that upgrade and then I'll play the build for like one more day and then I'll just go and go play a new build or something. And if it's even harder to then reorient and go towards a different strategy, I'm more likely to do that. And while I will usually have that feeling and then go play a new build, I imagine a lot of people have that feeling and then go play a new game.
You could also have the problem where, because a lot of people will just copy, like someone will make a guide once it gets and then copy it, but it might limit experimentation because, as we said, we expect the individual nodes to be less impactful, but when you have everything combined, it'll be strong. Let's say I decide that I want to try out, I don't know, someone name a mechanic.
To betrayal.
Betrayal. I want to do betrayal. So I have to like spec into all the betrayal ones to really get a full idea of it. And then I'm either like, oh, I got the items I needed from betrayal, or it wasn't as good as I thought it was. Actually, I want to go into harvest. It's not a case of, oh, I just need to unmake like 2 points in a region. It might potentially be need to like respec a whole side of the tree of routing to route on the left side, or maybe some of the like. I always look at, or with the current Atlas system, I always look at the rogue exile ones, and I'm like, are these good? I don't know, and they look like they might maybe be good with all these crazy things on there. So if I've got to work out, I need to collect 60 of these orbs or 30 of these orbs. Am I going to risk that, or will I just spec into like Alva? Because I know that Alva will probably be safe.
The thing that bothers me in these situations is that I try to think like, what is the upside? You know, why are they? Because it's a decision. Why are they making this decision? And I don't know. I couldn't really come up with
that I can
anything.
answer. That I can answer.
Yep.
So, because I agree with a lot of what you're saying, all of you, but to play devil's advocate on the reason why it might be good to have a difficult to respec one is if you make it very easy or cheap to respec, that encourages constant changing, which is getting closer to the multi-region system where you're having to juggle all these things and remember which ones you have and change it up and constantly shuffle it around. And then we're kind of going back to the old problems, the pre-existing problems. So having it be a little bit more locked in discourages constant changing like that, unless you want to make a bigger commitment to change to a new strategy.
I think also, especially sorry off the back of that, and this has been the main thing that this was gonna be my gotcha moment, but Ziggy beat me to it. We've already established that we're probably gonna have a rhythm of like, I'm gonna farm blue for a while, and then I'll farm red for a while, and then I'll farm Maven. It would probably be a pretty unhealthy system if you just go hard on anything that influences like all the blue drops, and you do your full Atlas around that while you're farming the blue witness. And then when you go to farm the red witness, you do a complete respec to do that. Then you do Maven, you do a full complete respec for that.
Yeah, but that's like we're talking about the absolute extreme opposite of like what we have with the skill tree. And if we assume that it's going to be kind of like our skill tree, I think there's a middle ground there. Like it's
So,
you know, we don't have to have it like be fully respectable at all times or not respectable at all.
Is it a situation where we kind of want it like maybe you get at the start, maybe you get like 50 free regrets, kind of like how when you level you get some regrets just from playing the
I have a
campaign.
suggestion or something I'd like to say. Just real quick, the something I'd like to say is that every character in the league had shared the amount of unlocks that you've unlocked, but they had their own tree to spec, and that then you can have different characters for farming different content, or if, you know, like you said earlier, what you've spec'd on your first character is like really bad for your second character. Your second character has its own independent tree. It's the same level of progression on both, but you get like a different loadout for each character. And then you're not really swapping. If you're swapping to two different characters which have different strategies, and that actually is kind of cool.
I agree on paper, but that's super exploitable because then if you're Trade League Andy, you make the same build 3 times. So when I'm mapping on the blue guy, I put all my gear on the blue guy. Now I want to do the red one, I take everything, put it on my red guy. When I do Maven, I put everything on the thing. And you get people who will just make this like 3 Inquisitors instead of 1.
Okay, so all these issues you're lining out just makes the system worse for everyone else. How about you just make it better for everyone else first, and then you worry about that later? I mean, if it's really that big of a problem, just balance it out. Let people play around with it this time, and just make respecing easy. If you're on SSF and you didn't take betrayal notes and you can't get on making orbs, I am going to mold so hard. I just make it easy.
I think a really thematic way of approaching it that would make it easier for solo self-found and would give another purpose to Kirak would be to make it so when you complete a Kirak mission, you get 2 points to respec with or 4 points to respec with up to a cap. And then you just kind of passively gain them as you're doing Kirak's missions, which makes sense because he's the Atlas man. And then whenever you need to respec, you can use those points you generated from him. And if you really want to respec, but you don't quite have some left, you can just go do a handful of his maps or something, and then you can respec.
Cool. That's like going and doing respec quests. You know, there's the you're trading time,
but a renewable resource.
Yeah,
a renewable resource for that.
I like it. That's a good suggestion.
Cool. Yeah. On the bright side, also, I guess, like for instance, if you want to do Legion now, you're no longer locked into like a small amount of maps that you have to choose from that are all except like dunes bad for doing Legion. Now you've got the entirety of your atlas that you can mess around with, so it really helps a lot with those bad layouts and really filtering them out for some of the contents.
Yeah, I know we've spent like quite a long time going over the possible problems of it. I much prefer this system. Like, I've been someone who's never liked any iteration of the Atlas, and I'm far more optimistic for this one because I've always felt like the Atlas hasn't really done what it's meant to be doing. This feels like it's getting close to that.
I find it really neat that in some ways it's somewhat of a step back to previous iterations of the Atlas, where we have this, pretty straightforward linear progression from lower tier maps to higher tier maps. No messing around with watchstones, no, obfuscated secondary systems that sit on top of the Atlas, and you have to learn to be able to deal with Atlas and mapping itself. But it's much more streamlined, and they've learned a lot of lessons, and they've come up with interesting things like the Atlas tree, and they're incorporating that. So we're kind of like, we're going back to the fundamentals, but with a more educated approach, I guess. I don't know really how to phrase it. It feels like ZiggyD has stepped up their game in a lot of ways.
I mean, they've learned from in every iteration. The original Sextant one was you can Sextant everywhere, and you just needed to like make the rings overlap. I was like, okay, this doesn't work. Okay, we're gonna try regions so people can place where they want to have their sextants. Okay, this is annoying. Okay, we're just gonna apply sextants everywhere. Much easier. And you can like interact with them easier in this little corner down here. Done.
Also, we don't have to explain like elder rings and all that rubbish, which was awful. I hated that one.
I mean,
It's a really small thing, but the fact that we're climbing up now is I really like that. That makes a lot more sense to people. It like fits the whole like tier 1 through 16. It fits the UI now instead of it being like some random sprawling. That's just a simple thing, but
and it's just the Atlas. You don't have you don't have to worry about like, oh, am I going to Arthane correctly? Am I like all of these proprietary capital letter names that people had to learn? No, it's just you're on the Atlas. You're going through the maps. You're chasing Blue Squid Man or you're chasing Maven. And,
also,
like, they're all fairly
you can see
systems.
the maps. There's another that thing of like, oh, this is a hidden map because my region isn't a high enough level. Where is this one?
That was weird.
And also,
you can't find it on the Atlas.
Yeah,
knowing which maps are at a natural tier where.
Another thing which is very cool about this, which even if the Atlas specking ends up being like super limited and regretting is a massive pain, as someone who spends way more time in Path of Building than Path of Exile, I've basically doubled my calculator time. When someone makes Path of Atlas building, I can spend a week not playing Path of Exile looking at trapped builds, and then when I finally made a good build, instead of looking to Path of Exile, I can instead plan out Atlas trees. This is a massive win. I might potentially never have to ever play Path of Exile again.
You're sick in the head, Tarke. Put it together.
Unrelated, but there is a new div card that was just released on the Twitter, and it is a set of 8 called the Tireless Extractor that gives 10 random oils. There you go. We'll go back to the discussion now. Just it was topical.
10 clear oils, poggers.
Probably most of the time, yeah.
Do you want to circle back around to the influence stuff? Because I felt like we spoke about the Atlas stuff pretty intensely. And Raiz, you had some issues that I said we'll circle back around to. So you don't seem too like sold on this whole new influence system. Do you want to maybe like dive into that a little bit deeper?
On the new influence system? Why wouldn't I see sold? You mean in terms of items?
Yeah, you were kind of like, oh, I don't know, because I'm going to have to be swapping between, I can only be witnessed by one at a time. Like, this is more micro.
No. Yeah, I mean, as far as that goes, yeah, I mean, it kind of bothers me because it is micromanagement in a way that, micromanagement and big menus, it always bothers me. But as far as like influence for items and stuff, I think it's been a huge step forward. I'm kind of, I guess since we were talking about items and I guess we're circling, I don't know if we're talking about items or the influences. It's interesting that they did Scourge League, which had to do with implicits, and now they're doing implicits again, but
better.
But better. But
no
then
downside.
like it felt like they could have done that before. So what was Scourge? Like this guinea pig league, or is this the guinea pig
feels like
league?
it, doesn't it? It feels like it was an experiment for this. They're like, oh, okay. They were testing whether downsides would work for this, and they're like, maybe not. Maybe we just go no downside.
Maybe we could be even more cynical. Maybe they just weren't sure about the adding like implicit tech. So Scourge was literally just a tech demo, and like, yeah, it works. All right, don't need to touch it.
I mean, the thing is, there's genuine upsides now. There were no upsides. Like, there were no upsides in Scourge, but I mean, there were, but like, I think across all of us, if we were to combine all of our upside items, I think maybe across all of us we could put together a singular, like, decent character.
Oh, let's not get ahead of ourselves.
I mean, I've had like one item.
I used one Scourged item on my level 100 character in Scourge League. Yes.
I did get very excited about getting 6 flat mana regen on a Gull, because that was genuinely quite helpful. But that was the best one I got all league. But I barely played Scourge.
You experienced the entire league.
Yeah. It was good. I didn't need. I got to save like 1 skill point on like mana nodes. It was excellent. Yeah.
Archnemesis looks cool.
Yeah, we're not on Archnemesis yet. Octavian.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We'll talk about influence.
Wow.
I mean, speaking of, because for me, it's what you guys talked about, because the Atlas stuff really hit me the same way, where I'm like, oh, they're going back on all these systems. It shows that they've learned. And then also Archnemesis is like another iteration on Nemesis, but it's kind of a combination of that. And then also things like, I guess you could say partially Ultimata, but not really. But then also Ritual.
I mean,
and
Metamorph.
like parts of Talisman, parts of Metamorph, exactly. And then during the trailer, they were also showing us these all like past endgame systems that they were going through. So it's kind of interesting how their approach is there. If they were like doing this consciously, where they're like, listen, guys, this game, it can still be great, or something like that. Like, I don't know how to describe it, but there's definitely, at least to me anyway, it seemed like there was a theme. And it's good that they're capable of looking back, because one of my biggest criticisms, I think, of GGG is that they would very frequently like move past these systems in the past that really work well, or they're like unwilling to look at another game that does something correctly, because they're just like, no, we can do this better or different, and they're just unwilling. Like, sometimes Last Epoch will just straight up steal skills from Diablo 2 or PoE, and I'm just like, I wish PoE did that. Why can't we have these skills that are just from other games? I don't know.
I'm actually, because you mentioned skills, I'm probably in the minority. I'm actually kind of glad we didn't get new skills this league. It would have been nice, but I've been saying for a while, especially I did a video recently where I counted like all the skill gems. There's so much bloat. And I think if GGG was to do more of maybe only introducing like 2 skill gems league or 1 skill gem league that are actually like a meaningful skill gem, rather than like, here's 5 new skills, of which like maybe 1 or 2 is decent and the rest are kind of filler, whatever. I don't know. I think more considered and less is better than just numbers.
I don't think you're in a minority. I really don't. I think a lot of people at this point just want a lot of updated skills. We keep asking for them. They keep baiting us. I mean, it was huge anticipation when they were like, yo, we updated 42 skills or 68 skills, and it ended up being like small numerical changes for like 19, really. And even that didn't even make an impact, and everyone was super hyped, and it just didn't make a dent in anything almost. So I think this is like a long time coming, and I think people, because they were so excited the first time, I don't think it's surprising that people are happy to see this coming now. I don't think we need new skills every time. I really don't.
I'm just glad that they're doing these skill changes in the right way, where they're not saying we're buffing 60 skills. They're saying we're, changing an archetype that's potentially going to be better. We're removing threshold jewels and potentially adding them to these gems. Yeah. They're not like marketing it. And that's all I've ever wanted. I didn't need them to tell me how it's buffed and then to find out that it's disappointing, the same way that self-casting is going to be. Because I'm going to be disappointed. Self-casting's not looking too hot.
We can talk about that. Go.
I think hand casting is going to be all right.
Like, all right,
I don't think it's gonna dominate the meta. There's probably gonna be a few standouts, but I do think it got a significant enough buff to be viable, and like it's a good starting point. I mean, I really like most of the Orb of Storm changes, because I like that a lot of the archetypes that are really powerful in a solo self-found or starter environment are the ones that have access to multiple similarly scaling skills, so that they can use a 5-link and a 4-link early on, or multiple 4-links and a 5-link. So like cold dot or minions or traps to some extent with things like seismic and flamethrower and all that. And Orb of Storm seems to be a tool that's going in that direction for lightning skills now. And like that alone, even if something like Storm Call or Ball Lightning hadn't gotten a numbers buff in its own right, makes those feel a lot more safe as a starter choice, because you have 2 different skills that are propping you up. So maybe if Storm Call doesn't end up good, but Orb of Storms is powerful, you can then pair Orb of Storms with something else. Go for Ball Lightning or go for Shock Nova or one of these other skills that's getting a big damage number buff.
What do you think about the Orb of Storm like hit thing though? That's
It's a little weird. I think it's either going to be extremely frustrating or entirely irrelevant. Because if you have enough cast speed that you can just drop it instantly after it expires, then it seems kind of irrelevant to me.
What was the amount of hits it lasts for again?
29.
So Orb of Storms will vanish after a certain number of hits, regardless of any duration scaling or anything that you have. Well, it doesn't even have a duration anymore. You place it and it stays there until it hits a certain number of times, then it goes away.
29 times, which is pretty large.
Wait, so it stays for
29.
It stays forever. No, it has no
Like-
duration.
If it's
7
not hitting anything, it'll stay there
seconds.
forever. I
You could
believe it doesn't
maybe
have.
use it for some like cool quality of life. Does it still passively hit things, like a curse on hit point of view, maybe?
Yeah, every
yeah.
like 3 seconds or so, I think.
I think
That
it's
could
much
maybe-
slower on the passively hitting. Yes.
Mm.
But yeah, I feel like if you're playing a hand casting build, like you're doing Storm Call or something, you're scaling a lot of cast speed because that's one of your main vectors for scaling damage. So you can place the Orb of Storms again like that. So I feel like it's just not even going to really do much in the end game, aside from maybe forcing you to go back into slightly close range to the boss again every now and again to drop your Orb of Storms. But then again, you have to stand near the Orb of Storms to use it anyway. So
Is this whole Orb of Storm change just an elaborate Tempest Shield spam nerf? I feel like that's kind of all it is, right?
Didn't
Because like
they
you have to recast
nerf
it
that?
more often or something.
They already nerfed it. That's the thing.
they changed Tempest Shield into a reservation.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
That's why the whole time that I was reading that, I'm just like, what are they trying to
I'm just-
get us to do here? Like,
Yeah,
use
I don't
use
get it.
Orb of Storms with staves, because you can't really play. Like, it's great that you're, let's assume, doubling the damage. They're not, but let's assume like they're doubling the damage on Orb of Storms. It's like there's no skill that hits at even like half the speed of what Tempest Shield was doing. So it's like, like this is great, but I can't play an Orb of Storms build anymore. Not to mention that I mean, you could probably, but I don't anticipate that it's going to be great.
I think
Okay.
it's more that I'm going to, like, if I were to approach it, I would play a Storm Call build that uses Orb of
Right.
Storms as an assistant, like it's
But then
a few
you-
extra 100,000 DPS or something at the top end that you get for the cost of a 4-link in your helmet with a +2 gems craft or something.
Oh, you
played
think
that
it would
build
be worth
before.
it?
I played that build before, and Orb of Storms was used for clearing, and then you used Stormcall for single target, which was a really nice setup. But they kind of like the way they changed Orb of Storms kind of kills that side of things. I think like maybe you can still drop it, and if you're doing enough damage, it'll still chain around the packs and be good enough. But
Yeah, but
Yeah,
they
I don't know.
limited the targets to 3 from 4.
Mhm.
So
But it doesn't change. But it doesn't chain to you, right? Didn't they change that as well?
the chain's from the
maybe.
center now instead of you.
They said
So you
that
don't-
it did.
your
Okay, so
positioning doesn't matter.
before I think it needed to chain to you to chain out or something. So you don't need that extra chain, right? So that chain you lost is irrelevant. It just, if you're in the circle, you still need to be in the circle, right? And then it just saps if you're in the circle without it having to chain to you.
I
Yes.
do.
That's
tend
how
to-
I understood it.
Yeah, no, I think you're correct, Nikki.
Oh yeah.
I think maybe you're right.
I would say so. It's just on that point, it's better. And now you're saying it's there forever. I like that so much. I feel like you guys are not appreciating permanent buffs and not having to refresh things very much. Like if you place it down and you all of a sudden have to move because of mechanic and you come back, it's still there. You're not refreshing it, and it just allows for much smoother play.
No, I agree. It's what I was saying earlier with like the utility aspect of it, not even like the damage point of view. Like,
But
if you're-
even from a damage point of view, I mean,
Yeah, true,
29 hits is a lot.
Mhm.
Like,
It's a lot,
what
yeah.
builds are pumping out 29?
I feel like you can get a lot of damage out of it. You get a +2 crafted helmet with like an Essence of Horror craft on it, and It's like a 5.5 link. I don't know. I feel like it's worth it, but I
hope so.
We'll
That's
have to
a
see.
lot of damage for a single cast if you can like keep moving around and using it. I think it seems super good. And then I mean we have permanent marks and like all these things where it's like you actually don't have to constantly refresh things anymore. It's all adding up.
Yeah, permanent marks is great.
Yeah.
I like the mark changes.
I was surprised about that.
Yeah.
Because we used to have permanent curses and they took that out, but now they're bringing back permanent marks. Uh-oh. I wonder how it's going to turn out. If there's going to be some abuse cases, or if they're learned their lesson with that.
What was the abuse cases before?
People would enter like boss fights, curse a bunch, and then they would enter with another character and tag it as one player, but the curses would be there permanently. I mean, these are old like ways of playing the game. Like that's how Havoc
Okay.
killed Uber at Ziri, for instance.
Right. Okay. So
you would
we're-
have a
okay,
guy come in
again.
with like mass curse and then leave.
In for the sake of just having the game actually play nice, I'll take the abuse cases and then find a way to solve that instead of
Sure.
making the gameplay worse. Again, I feel like that's again one of those places where it's like,
I like your
okay,
mantra.
Whoa, hold
People
on. The
figure it
gameplay
out.
worse? You think that like recasting an ability and having a rotation makes the gameplay actively worse?
no,
I feel
I'm
like
talking about
PoE
marks
It
specifically with a
depends, yeah.
single cast and a single enemy that is designed for a single. Not like all curses. I think general curses. I'm happy to have a duration.
There's like a
I
big
think-
difference between
I
like
mean,
having
okay,
to. Oh, go on, no.
I've played like so many of my builds where I just self-cast the mark, and I know so many people try and like auto-cast it through other means. I don't know. I like this a lot.
I get that. I don't think it is objective though. Like I definitely will find this new system more comfortable, but I don't think that it's like objectively better to take a rotation out of the game. The same thing for the Orb of Storms. Like
Rotation.
yeah, it's like a rotation. You're using a skill, then you're using a bunch of other skills, then you're using another skill, then you're using another skill. Like
I
you're casting
think-
your Orb of Storms, you're casting your mark. Maybe you have an extra curse, you're casting that. I don't know. I feel like it adds to gameplay rather than take away and just have like a one button sort of situation.
I agree with you, Raiz, in the case where you're actually got like meaningful choice about when you're using that. With the case of a mark,
Sure.
like if you're putting marks to build, you mark the boss. Like there's no like giga
True.
placement of like, oh, I need to
Yeah.
drop my sigil of power and stand in the correct place, or I drop my frozen shell. You know, it's just, and it's as you said. The main thing that I didn't like about the mark system, I think that's why we now have mark on hit, is they realized that mark targeting was really finicky with the fact that
Yes.
it's only on rares and uniques. So like you've got to have the cursor and the pinpoint location and everything. So it's just like it's a workaround for the awkward mechanics on that sense. Although I will say that it does now make some mechanics seem kind of weird, like they had to change the Deadeye thing. That was one thing they're updating the Deadeye mark passive so that now when a marked enemy dies, it goes to a new enemy, which seems kind of worthless if you're already like automatically marking on hit, unless that means that you can put it on non-rares. So like if you kill the rare, it goes onto a white mob that then goes onto another white. But it's kind of like it's a bit, I don't know, it's a bit weird.
Yep,
But I don't know.
I agree.
I don't know. I saw because the thing is, if marks kind of like run around. Wait, so how does the support mark gem work now? Quick primer again.
You link it to a mark.
mechanically.
You link it
Yes.
to a mark, and then when you hit an enemy with an attack, that
With
enemy is
anything.
with an attack.
An
Only
attack.
attacks.
Yeah.
I don't like how
Um,
that's not spells. I don't get why it's not spells, since it doesn't have to be linked to the skill as well.
Because this is a spellcaster league, Ziggy. We can't give them too many tools.
It's a bow league.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I did
Guess
find that
it is
odd.
rangery themed, I guess.
Yeah.
Marks kind of
Yeah.
bowy ranger themed.
I mean,
I
Deadeye's
guess.
the mark ascendancy, so yeah.
It's okay though, because now you can start shield charging on your caster again for situational buffs, because we really liked it when casters did that, right?
Great point, Tarke. Good then.
Nice little buff for Spellslinger as well.
Now we
Yeah.
just got to
be
bring
running
Vigilant
right
Strike
now.
back.
Yeah.
I liked Vigilant Strike. Okay. I had a good time with it. That was
Meaning-
my rotation, meaningful buff.
Meaningful rotation. Exactly. I was about to say. Heck yeah.
Okay then. So to kind of, since we're kind of getting lost in the mire a little bit, are there any standout changes from the patch notes you want to talk about before we start talking about the league mechanic itself?
How do you guys feel about the bow changes, buffs? Because I feel like pretty confident that a lot of the self-cast buffs will have an impact, like you guys said. You know, might not be top of the meta, but there'll be some good stuff and they'll feel better. But the bow stuff, I'm less confident about for sure.
The bow bases seem to get some pretty significant buffs. That's the part of it that's got me the most optimistic. A lot of the bow bases got like a, 15-20% buff overall or something?
Citadel bows gained 44%.
The fizz side of stuff. Yeah, the fizz side of stuff seems pretty alright. The elemental side of things, do you think that is... So they took some damage off of like added lightning, added cold, and they upscaled the added elemental and bows quite a lot, actually. Like the amount is very large. But do you think that people are going to go back to using like tri-ele thickets or something? Like, I just feel like
I think with how strong the mods they are and how much elemental damage has been augmented as a playstyle, I think there's a chance. I think there's a real chance, yeah.
I think
over Doomfletch
the biggest
or other
Doomfletch looks really solid. I think the biggest issue, and this is why I'm league starting Bleed, but there's been an issue for a long time with bows where it's kind of like dot bows have been viable for a really long time, and they were like, we want to focus on buffing attack hit based bows, and this change buffs bleed and poison, and those were already good builds. So if you wanted to play an attack based bow build that wasn't Corsair or Toxic Rain, then it's like, well, Scourge Arrow and Bleed Bow were already good, and now they're just like guaranteed better. Whereas with the Ellie stuff, it might still be good, but that seems much more of a question mark. So that to me is a bit odd.
Well, Bleed Bow was nerfed with the change they did to the Influence mod, and since then I haven't really seen Bleed Bow really relevant.
It's been a thing. It's been a thing.
I mean, it's a thing. I mean, self-cast has always also been a thing. I don't know if that's, how strong it is.
So I recently put a video out on this. So if there were a lot of people in Trade League who are still using the Delirium Snipe Helmet, and they can like delete stuff with that. There's a couple of people doing bleed stuff in SSF. Like, it was by no means amazing, but it was pretty easy and achievable to get a tanky character on like a gladiator or a champion with like guaranteed like 1 mil dot damage, which is pretty much the same stuff that the Caustic Arrow people were doing. So it's like, if you actually compared it to like Caustic Arrow stuff or like Bane builds, it was very similar ballpark numbers. It just wasn't as attractive, obviously, because it did receive a series of changes and nerfs, but yeah, you could do. But
I would say that with the changes, we're more going back to like it being on like that level again. So it's like, it's good. Like bow builds are probably like Bleed Bow is probably gonna be good again as they were, but I don't think it's gonna like exceed that time where we had the Elder mods. I think maybe the same in terms of power, like with the bow changes. Maybe more consistent, which could be nice.
Yeah, it's also hard to predict the impact of the new influence.
The thing is, with Ellie as well, like a lot of people try. So a lot of Ellie builds have been enabled in the past through Elemental Overload, and so depending on where this thing is going to be situated, do we know that at all yet? The
it's
new
taking
40%.
It's taking the place of Wind Dancer, and Wind Dancer is moving up and to the right a little.
I mean,
so it's pretty much dead center, bottom right between Duelist and Ranger.
Yeah, which is a super easy place to go. So now you're basically like, I mean, that's super easy for Ellie builds to be right there. So that just basically gives you the EO without having any crit consistency issues in an area that has plenty of accuracy. So like that whole archetype can easily win out with the bow changes as well. So I mean, whether or not they're gonna see huge play, I don't know. But bows like historically have really good mechanics, and marks are free now, and bow bases are doubled in in attack damage, and we have a 40% damage multiplier in the region. So I mean,
I do still think that like Fizz Impale stuff is probably going to be Fizz Impale or like Bleed Bow stuff as far as the hardcore bow meta is concerned will probably be some of the stronger ones.
Yeah, I think Impale you're right with.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
don't
think Impale would
really
be
so
cool.
much see the Ellie stuff taking over in hardcore, but it's a playstyle that's very popular in the past in softcore and has held on to some degree. All even through previous metas where it wasn't all that strong. People, I mean, Grimro to some degree, but people play Tornado Shot. I don't know. We'll see.
Also, another thing, just quickly, on the new 40% node, it's incredibly easy to activate with the new mastery that's giving you 100 accuracy per green socket on your bow. So, like, you take that mastery, you have that node, and that's you sort of for nearly all of the leveling.
And the
I think on the mark stuff, by the way, since it's automated now and for attacks, I think you really underestimate the power of automated sniper's mark.
Yeah.
You've never had that before.
Well, we have,
Not
but
a-
you had to use the Azimuth's helmet.
Yes, which is a constriction in itself and
No,
not
it's
something you have to begin with.
It's very, very good for SF players.
and poachers.
Yeah, but as a starting build, it's not something you could ever rely on. And a lot of people choose not to run these builds because they have the constriction of needing that before you can even get going.
Well, it's a
Yeah.
huge.
Also, you
it's a
have
huge
access
buff.
to quality on marks like that now too when they're
True.
automated.
True.
Which is huge because it's like charge generation.
Yeah.
And they've, I mean, we saw one, was it a mastery or a new point? I forget, but they added some effect on the tree.
10% chance to gain frenzy charges on
10%
hit.
chance to gain a frenzy charge on marked enemies. And then Poacher's Mark has quality already. So if you're willing to run Poachers and get that mastery, you just get frenzies against everything all the time, which is pretty nutty. Like, I'm looking at Deadeye as a starter as well. I know Tarke mentioned it earlier that he was looking at that for his, but Deadeye's been like on the fringe for a while now. I think like has some powerful things that are just really difficult to enable, and this league is allowing a lot of those to be enabled much more easily.
The other good thing about poachers, which is what I'm using, a lot of people forget about it. It lowers enemy fizz mitigation. So it's a massive boost for either bleed or if you're doing impale fizz. And it gives you a massive chunk of mana gain on hit, which is really nice.
Really nice.
Because what happens a lot with those builds is you can very easily sort your mana problems while map clearing with like leech or whatever, especially more so on like dot builds. And then when you're bossing, I remember Ziggy, I think it was in Delirium you played bleed, and you had that issue when you were trying to like boss. You're like, oh, hang on, my mana's being a bit shit. What do I do now? With that Poacher's Mark, you're getting guaranteed like 50, 60 mana every time you hit the boss. No mana issues. Like you're sorted.
The Void Fletcher nerf was a bit sad though. Like they made regular quivers a lot nicer, like a lot nicer, but the Void Fletcher.
I think they were
fun quiver and kind of carried a lot of mid-tier builds.
They were trying to get ahead of a situation where the bow meta became almost exclusively Void Fletcher builds, and I can see why they were worried about that. Because Void Fletcher was, as you said, kind of carrying the archetype to what extent it was played in previous leagues. So they didn't want to buff it and then just have everyone go, oh, okay, so we'll just play only Void Fletcher when we play Ellie Bow stuff. But
it's such a fun item though. Like
they should
have
gonna
have items
strong.
that dominate metas like that. At least have them be mechanical and fun.
And
like,
also
I'm okay with that.
Like locked behind a really difficult endgame boss fight. It's behind Uber Elder. Like it's fine if it's strong. I understand why they nerfed it, but I feel like they could have left it as a powerful chase item.
They've shown a lack of confidence in their buffs with that, It's like, oh, why don't you just make everything else the same?
You could argue the other way, that they've shown a confidence in their buffs. They think bows are going to be so strong that they need to nerf Void Fletcher preemptively so that it doesn't destroy the meta.
I think damage does, because like hand casting has a set of problems that like bow doesn't really. And I feel like just giving bows more damage addresses a lot of the issues that they have. While hand casting still like remains stationary and all that. But maybe they thought that like people are willing to stand around and like play this kind of like a clunky, usually 2-button playstyle as long as they're dealing damage. So they were just like, yeah, let's give them damage and see how it goes. It's an interesting approach, sticking to their guns where we still have a big difference between these playstyles and not just turning self-casting into like what everything else is, or bows for that matter.
So one thing about Void Fletcher, which there was a video which went wild, I think it was like 2 leagues ago, and it didn't get nerfed as far as I'm aware. So you can still make Void Fletcher good with this. You use alt quality Mirage Archer, so you get like 5 of them at once. Conduit shares the charges to you, and you can put Mirage Archer on a ballista and use Focus Ballista. So when you attack, the ballistas summon Mirage Archers, which give you Void Fletcher charges, meaning you get infinite Void Fletcher charges because you generate like 200 a second. If you go on YouTube, there's like videos of people playing with it.
Do you mean Blink Arrow? Or Mirror Arrow?
I can't remember which one of the two it was. It's the same shit. It was Mirror Arrow. It was Mirror Arrow.
You were saying Mirage Archer.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Mirror Arrow.
Mirage Archer on a totem. I'm just like,
Yeah,
God
sorry,
damn,
sorry,
these
sorry about
mechanics are crazy.
No, yeah, sorry, Mirror Arrow. Yeah, that was really good. And people were like, whoa, they haven't nerfed this. Blah, blah, blah. But you can still do that.
Say it's fixed.
Well, maybe. It was a video which had like 100k views or something a couple of these ago, and they didn't change it. So, you know.
Also, the quiver is not dead, by the way.
Oh, apparently
I saw people saying like, "Oh my god, they nerfed it by all the way down to a quarter of the damage." So they nerfed it by like 33% or 37%. It's still a hit to the bow itself or to the quiver itself, but you know, it's still.
Apparently, it has maybe been fixed. I don't know. But I think what you were saying, Raiz, was kind of interesting because it's something that I used to complain about quite a lot with traps in old leagues. Is like it was like every league they just give traps more damage, and I'd be like, this isn't really like the issue. They do enough damage. So like with the spell thing, is there a break point where like they just do enough damage that like, oh yeah, this is an amazing build? Because most people talk about like the card speed issues or the defense issues or
damage covers up a lot of problems. So you can solve every problem with more damage. Ultimately, it's whether you should or not is the question. Whether you should solve every problem with damage.
And there's a lot of hand casted spells with some pretty powerful mechanics. I mean, things like the coverage of things like Rolling Magma or Stormcall and all that can get pretty insane. You can argue there's very powerful mechanics there. It's just, I don't know. Yeah, I'd actually say it's just they've been lacking damage lately. I know it's not a very like complicated buff that they're doing this time around, but I'm in favor of it. I think a lot of these skills will actually be a lot more viable with just number bigger. They didn't really need too much in the way of a mechanical overhaul.
Reality,
there's a handful that needed more than just number bigger. I don't think anyone's going to be doing amazing things with lightning tendrils, but you know, there's a lot of very solid skills in there that just hadn't been touched up to current numbers.
The unfortunate reality is that you kind of don't want hand casting to be good. Like, I don't think it's good for the game when builds with such low investment just work so well because people start getting tilted about like other playstyles. I feel like that was one of the main reasons why so many people talked so much shit about melee for the longest time, was because like, yeah, I mean, of course, compared to something that scales with gem levels and doesn't need accuracy, of course it's going to feel like it sucks.
Yeah.
But then I do feel like Bow's top end is going to get so juiced this league that, yeah, maybe the people who just want to play a bow build and don't really want to invest and don't really want to take so much time, they're probably still not going to have a great time with bows. But then the people who do want to focus a little bit more on this like playstyle, I think they have a lot more potential now to really make it viable or even great.
Yeah,
I think so too.
I wanted to talk about unique bows, but also on the caster thing and defenses. It was something I spoke about in a Baeclast last league, and you guys were kind of like about it. And I'm glad it didn't get nerfed, but I'm still kind of sad that nearly every single build that I see these days, which is recommending like awesome defenses, is they're just running Grace, Determination, Defiance banner. And that, I think, is going to get really boring really quickly when people realize like you just put these 3 things in your build and you've got a good build. Yeah.
I don't know if they're like great defenses. I mean, they're like really good because they're really simple and really straightforward, but they're still lacking much of like what we used to have. And you still kind of have to gear suppression to really do this stuff.
They're good for mapping.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of places where they just don't provide the things that you really need. Like there's plenty of encounters that are like degen based or like heavy spell based or all these kind of other thing based, or you know, Or like maybe you don't have enough armor to take a big fist slam. Like you might have good armor, but it's not gonna cover you in that area. So it's like it provides that lack of defense that a lot of people really needed when flasks were nerfed, without having to constantly spam the flasks. So I don't know. I think that they provide what players need right now. So I don't think I think it's good that they exist in the way they do for now, at least. And they are, I mean, they aren't free.
No.
Auras
Yep.
are strong,
I'm,
right? Like, so you're giving up a lot of power by running them over
I'm
something
kind of-
else.
I'm kind of two minds on this one because I really like the current state of basic defenses. I think it's good that armor and evasion feel impactful, and I'm even fairly okay with spell suppression, though I think it's a bit overtuned on some pieces
Yeah.
of gear here and there. But what I don't like is the opportunity cost that gets hit for like mind over matter builds and mana stacking builds as an archetype. So I don't know. Rather than seeing things like base layers of defense like armor and evasion gets just straight up nerfed in a sort of like swing the pendulum back reactionary kind of way, I'd like to see more tools slowly added to make it a little more compelling, maybe to not reserve all of your mana. You know,
Blessing?
Blessing's a great example of that.
mean-
I don't think it's quite enough, is what I'm saying. I think that's a good step in the correct direction, but I don't think it's quite enough. And I'd love to see some more love to the top, middle, and top right of the tree in that regard.
Do you think pre-nerf Archmage would be fine right now? Considering that
We'll
it's
have
like
to see how
impossible to invest?
we'll have to see how the bow and hand casting changes work out. I think actually. And how
Okay,
it
yeah.
would, like,
that
compare
makes
against
sense.
that. I personally, as a player who really enjoyed Archmage, have a hard time answering that question without being biased.
Same. That's why I'm asking without giving an opinion.
I mean, how much? Because the thing is, like, Archmage doesn't really benefit that much from base damage changes to spells,
True.
anyways, right? So
Effectiveness changes are good though, depending on the spell.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Yes.
effectiveness changes.
that is true.
They are
So
big.
It's, like, it's hard to
I
say.
I love effectiveness changes for spells though, because it increases, like, I feel like attack based builds have so much to scale off of, and spells have just like, sometimes it's dot, but it's mostly just gem levels. There's not a whole lot of room for investment that has a baseline that just function well. Adding effectiveness makes it so that you can itemize better, and maybe it's the better way to like have a nice character that you can continuously develop the same
I
way you
think,
can with attacks.
I think what they did with OOS, they need to do to more of the archetypical, like, secondary skills, like the ice one, for instance. They could buff that a little bit. I mean, if you want to bring up Archmage, maybe make the, what's the thing on the ground called again? The lightning
Sigil
one.
of
The
Power?
sigil. Maybe bring that up a little bit. Like maybe don't just bring up Archmage, but maybe bring out things around it.
Mm.
So it's not just like this numerical thing you can't get
Why they
completely right.
Why they got a nerf freaking Stormbind? Man.
Go on.
Wait, they nerfed
What
it?
did they do to
What
it?
happened with
So-
that?
so
they
they
buffed it.
They buffed Stormbind's numbers, yes, but if you look at the unique changes, they changed the gloves that used to give you a flat amount of mana cost to instead
yes.
cause you to lose mana, and that no
Yeah,
longer
that
is
makes-
you're spending mana on charging runes, which means that you have to invest much harder or play a super clunky version with Indigon in order to actually charge your runes at any sort of decent speed. So the only viable version of Stormbind now, and that's viable with massive asterisks next to it, is Ignite Stormbind, because you don't really need to charge that one very much for it to feel okay.
That
Because you only have to charge
reaction,
one or two runes.
I
They
love
buff
that.
blood magic with the gloves.
Blood magic doesn't work because it specifies it charges based off of mana spent.
No. I
Not
said
resources.
they buffed blood magic for the like.
He
The
just
says
gloves
that he
and blood
likes it.
magic.
Unrelated. Nobody's talking about Stormbind. Calm down.
Fair
Okay.
enough, fair enough.
I will say quickly off the back of that, that reaction was the reaction I had when I read that adding a Chaos Resist aura to Raiz Screw whose idea that was.
Oh, that was
is
a great idea.
It's blue mobs
No.
too.
That needed to be a thing. No, because this is the thing,
fuck.
and it's the same thing for Fizz. I mean, these are just things that some of these builds just have a too easy time with compared to like Ellie and stuff.
Well, no, but that's the whole thing. Like, that was Chaos used to. I know it's not the same now, but Chaos used to always be balanced around the fact that in theory it did lower damage, it was reflect immune, and there was less resistances, and there was less way to penetrate resistances. Whereas you've got a cultist, and you've got like Helmcraft, and like maybe one unique.
We've had a cultist for like 6 years, Tarke. Calm down.
And despair.
Yeah, just I don't know.
Maybe there's new mods with the blue and red implicit stuff.
I'm in despair over the idea of playing a non-occultist Corsair carry.
They nerfed Arcanist because I was gonna suggest like for
They could have just not nerfed Arcanist, man. I feel like they could have just not nerfed it.
I was
don't know,
like
maybe it would've been
Stormbind
okay.
Arcanist
Oh,
brand.
yeah.
That's crazy.
Oh my god.
I think they were
Maybe it
worried
would've been
about
so
Ignite.
big.
I'm actually a bit sad about the Unleash nerf as well, because nobody plays Unleash for hand casting anyways endgame, because it always gets surpassed by just normal casting eventually. So I'm like, who is this for?
Yeah, I was sad about that because Unleash is very fun,
Yes.
and the design of it is really good for promoting like multi-skill usage. So you have like 2 different Unleash spells, which you don't do so much with regular hand casting. So, and like you said, it tops out because eventually it's got the same problem like the slam skills and stuff had. Eventually, attack speed or cast speed is always the way that you get more damage. So it's kind of a weird, like it didn't.
So
really
what
need
you're
nerfing.
saying is that they need to remove spell echo so you don't have that issue.
Yes, right.
More.
That's
Do
it.
it. I dare you.
ZiggyD killed spell echo and Holy Flame Totem.
And
I love-
Headhunter buffs from Archnemesis.
Ah.
I love how
This
much
man
cast-
right here.
This guy.
I wanted to, because we spoke about this before in regards to Fizz weapons when they did the rework Fizz weapons. How do we feel about the fact that when they did buff the base damage of bows, they then went in and like then started tweaking and lowering a lot of the values on unique bows?
I think they went too ham
Mm.
on the nerfs. I understand that there needs to be an adjustment, you know, so some bows maybe don't just end up being like strong enough to basically just take on all the endgame content on their own, right? You kind of want something in between. But then just keeping them basically the same as before just make them irrelevant compared to all the new rare bows, I feel.
Especially weird with stuff like Hope Shredder. It's like when they saw that they were like changing it Zeri's disfavor. I'm like, oh, cool, they're gonna make it Zeri's disfavor. It's like, oh, it's just on normal at Zeri. Yeah. I'm hoping because they haven't shown what it is, but there's gonna be a new bow. I'm really hoping the new bow is like actually like a nice end game bow, but I'm not that optimistic about that.
It'll be something weird, I guarantee you. It'll be like super weird. I feel like all the new bows they've released have been very weird of late.
I don't know why they're so. I don't like
This thing chain forks off walls, but only when there's no monsters around.
I have breaking news. News flash. Bex messaged me and said that Kirek missions cannot be witnessed.
Oh.
We gave him too much credit. Unlucky.
I am sorry for bringing that up. For raising any hopes that I may have raised. I apologize.
On the bright side, speaking of the unique bow, and it's
letting us know.
Yes, thank you. On the bright side, though, speaking of unique bows, my God, the new fucking unique items are crazy. They're insane.
Mm-hmm.
And I like it because when I saw those, I was like, I hope it's from a big boss. And they're all from big bosses. So I hope they continue this. It's so nice to see.
How about them jewels, eh?
The multi-classic.
PoE needed those jewels. They're like some of the most fun and aspirational items in other ARPGs, where it's like you can basically off skill or off class or off something, you know, at a certain point where you can completely change everything around, and they're always fun chase items. So I think it's one of the coolest things they could add.
And they're kind of like the next logical step from Thread of Hope, you know? Thread of Hope lets you jump a bit on your tree and yoink something. Well, these ones let you jump to another ascendancy tree and yoink something.
I am looking forward to everyone's League starter videos because I had it with my one being like, what ascendancy point should I steal? It's like, no, my dude, that's not how this
Really?
works. People are already planning around it. Like, ooh.
Just
I mean-
just FYI for the folks watching, they drop corrupted, so you cannot roll them into something else. You have to drop with the exact stats you want. You need the exact right base class out of 9, correct? And then the exact right ascendancy node out of however many ascendancy node that ascendancy has. I think it's variable. And then you're not done.
You need
Do it
the
again.
other one.
Do it
Yeah.
again.
How many?
And then you
On
can
the
use
opposite color.
How many ascendancy nodes are there? Do you have like off the cuff? Do you know?
Not off the top of my head. I've never bothered to count that.
Like
7 base
80,
classes. Sorry, I can't count.
90, 100.
A lot of people in chat are saying 168.
All right, because it's all the ascendancy, so it's 21 times. Okay.
It's a couple.
So this is like if you want
Okay.
a sort of comparison point to something that we've had in the game for a while, this is like a 2 mod or 3 mod Watcher's Eye. Like, except you also need 2 of them to be able to use either one.
It's like how many headhunters have you had? No, that's not, how many mirrors have you had drop? Now get 2. You know, I really want one of like the top SSF streamers to get the same one twice, but like 2 reds or 2 blues. That'd be the most tilting experience ever. I really want that to happen to someone.
Sounds like a job for Steel Mage, except he'll get the right ones.
Yeah.
And you also have to luck into dropping it from the boss, because the boss probably has a pool of various different things it can drop, and it's not always going to give you the jewel.
Have they shown off any of the Archnemesis uniques? I don't think they have they?
Don't believe so.
Are there any?
Well,
Yeah,
there
did
must
they
be
say
some,
that?
surely.
I think it was not that many unique items that are coming in. Wasn't it like 12 or something? I don't know if that includes the boss ones. I would
Oh,
imagine
apparently
so.
there aren't any. Oh, okay then.
There you have it.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. That's the worst part about this. I mean, it's the worst and the best part that, like, the Arch Nemesis League.
Oh, it's great. That means they can scrap the entire league next league, and we can just be on to the next one. I'm excited.
I think there's actually some cool
I
things about
don't-
Archnem.
I
don't
mean,
know.
I think it's cool, but I don't need more league mechanics. in
Yeah,
the
it's
game.
you want to minimize blood.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's really neat, the system, but you know, yeah. It's
I mean,
just
there's
what it-
usually with an expansion like this, usually the league mechanic is
yeah.
either not good or kind of a nuisance. I
Well,
think Metamorph was kind of a
so-
success, though.
Can I
I
bounce
think it's
something
gonna be
off you
fun.
guys?
Go on,
Actually, it's on the
Octavian.
topic of the uniques. I feel like I'm just a big idiot because there's the one of the jewels that they added is Dissolution of the Flesh, which removes all energy shield, and life that would be lost by taking damage is instead reserved until you take no damage for 2 seconds, and then you get a more multi to life, which is obviously huge. Is that not just the behavior of ES recharge, except you can't scale recharge rate because it's a different
Yes.
stat?
No, quite, because you don't have to regenerate after that, because you're always
Yeah, it's
reserving.
instant regen.
Yeah, and you can
Okay, so
probably
it
scale
instantly
it
comes
with
back
like
after the 2 seconds. sure.
yeah,
And
you can
you
probably
can put
scale it
yourself
with.
on.
Oh, gone.
Reduced reserved. Yeah.
No, you can put yourself on low life forever,
Mm.
while having full life.
Yep.
Oh, by
If you
like
have- if-
self damaging.
Yeah, or yeah, or just like you.
But
can
if
do
you
that.
were doing that, then you would never actually unreserve it. I just don't see
No,
a
okay,
really
okay,
good
okay.
use case.
You
for
can
this.
be on. Okay, let me explain this. If you have 20,000 life and
I
your
asked.
life, and you go down to 1 life total, right, out of 20,000, and then you don't have anything reserved. Your life pool is 20,000 right now. Now you can take 19,999, wait 2 seconds, and still have just 1 life, and it goes back up. The thing is, reservation of it only cares a reservation of life. Your life can be whatever number it is. The reservation of life, when nothing is reserved, means that you need to take 100% of your life pool reserved all the way down before you die. So it never cares about the actual number of your current life pool, just how much is reserved.
You're always on full life, which is pretty neat
Why?
That's cool.
because of
Wait,
the way
no.
the reservation
No.
works. You're always on full life.
No. Is that how it works?
Isn't it the
You're not always
opposite?
on full mana if you reserve a portion of your mana. I don't
Oh,
think.
No,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
you can reserve your life below it in your low life.
wait, no, hang on. If you reserve 50% of your mana, right, and you have 50% mana, you've got full mana, correct? as far as the game's
No.
concerned.
No,
No.
No,
no.
no.
I mean, there's
Oh.
very few mechanics that interact with
It's the
false
Why you
opposite.
don't want to do
because,
that?
No,
like,
no. What
That's-
Tarky's saying is correct, but that way you would have to regenerate your life.
But it instantly regens.
Yeah, but it's if you
I'm sorry, I dove us into
if you have
this.
100 HP and you
No.
get hit for 80, now you have 20 HP. So now you have to get hit for 80 again to be considered full life. Otherwise, you have 20 out of 100 HP
That's why agnostic keeps
because you're
spamming you
unreserved.
Right,
in
yeah.
that situation.
Yeah, it doesn't regen, it just you just gain it back.
I don't understand what you guys how. No, it's not.
I've
you're
lost
not
the thread
full
as well, Nugi. I've lost the thread.
No, but like how? Okay, explain to me how Pain Attunement would ever work if that was the case when you have people reserving their life.
Yeah, no, I did it
Yeah,
dumb. I did it dumb.
I just didn't see a
Bit
use case
confusing
for it
now,
immediately,
yeah.
and I was wondering if you guys had.
Yeah.
See, Ziggy.
So basically, you get an X, so it's like 29% more life, which is kind of substantial, right? So it's like
Oh yeah, huge.
that's a buffer. You can't you can't activate recovery other than the 2 seconds, so you can't like scale that. But I mean, you get a it's like CI 7 years ago.
Yes, that's what I'm saying, and to me, that doesn't seem very good.
I mean, it depends if you can take advantage of it, and then you can put yourself permanently on low life, and it has like, like, and 29% more life is like it's not nothing.
Again, it's like CI 7 years ago because it used to have a more multi behind CI
I think
CI
it's
7 years ago had
hard.
20,000 energy shield.
and instant leech.
Yep.
Ooh.
Well, actually, I don't know if it did back then.
Well, not all
I
builds.
didn't really play that.
Plenty
much
of builds ran around with no regen, no leech, and they're just waiting.
That's a little bit before my time, but yeah.
It's a buff to body swap because that deals damage based on your maximum life, correct?
I don't know.
I don't know. Don't ask me about body swap. I play Stormbind. That's enough garbage builds for me.
This is me in this conversation.
Ashes of the Stars looks really cool. That one's very straightforward. Plus
Yeah.
1 to all skill gems.
Yeah.
12% preservation. 7% XP gain. Just
That one-
good stats.
That one's okay because now
A lot
you
of
have
quality.
+1 on like all amulets. So
Yeah, but
getting
the
+1
quality,
amulets should-
Quality.
Yeah, the
body.
quality's
of
big.
all skill gems is a lot harder to get. For
Could
certain
you-
things.
Could
Sure.
you increase enhanced level? Or you could do it. Was there a Dex gem something on amulets? Wasn't there?
Dex gem? I'm not sure I follow.
Like
a
plus
+2 Dex gems
one.
that can roll on amulets, yeah.
But it's not
Right, so I guess
supports,
that
it's
was
just
like-
skills.
But that's
that was-
active, so yeah.
yeah.
This is
Oh.
everything, right? Including
Yeah.
support.
Also, you couldn't
It
actually
says all
amulet.
skill gems.
So basically, you
Oh,
couldn't
but it's
you
skill
couldn't
gems.
increase enhance through an amulet before, right?
No.
So that means you're basically getting that like the extra level plus the 19 quality. I
You
think
could
that's
get
interesting for like enhance.
You could get +1 Dex gems though, can you?
Yes.
Yeah, but that was +1 to level of active Dex gems
Yeah,
or something.
true,
I forget
true.
the exact wording.
Yeah.
Wait, so
Isn't it
does this
skills,
work on
not
supports or
supports?
no?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's
Does
just
this work
skills.
on supports? The new
I
one?
don't think
Skills.
so.
Not supports, just skills.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
But
enhances
the quality.
now I'm a dum dum.
We're all, I think it's
Extremely.
safe to say we're all dum dums here. I think that's something we can all share together.
I'm not.
Ziggy.
Love you, Ziggy.
Beast he disappeared. Good call.
Okay, we're very much getting lost in the mires. Let's talk Archnem. So a few people kind of like,
Sure.
One thing I think which is interesting about Archnemesis, because I see a lot of parallels to it in Metamorph, is Metamorph was the league that came in with the old Conqueror system. So I think it's kind of neat the way that they've got this whole new endgame and they've done basically Metamorph 2.0, which is kind of cool.
I love
It's
how in
really-
all of the footage that they've shown us of Archmage, of Archnemesis, sorry, they never actually killed a rare mob. Every single time the guy starts fighting like a fat ass necromancer, and then just like switch to a different piece of footage, and then again he's like fighting him for 20 seconds, and they switch away, and he's like half HP every time. It's like, oh, I don't know if I like this that much.
Yeah.
Is this a build issue, or is this I'm gonna be spending 30 minutes fighting a rare mob problem sort of problem?
I
The
feel a
fourth
little
one is
bit
gonna be
debated
rough.
by the name. I brought this up in the Q&A.
Yeah.
Because the name is Archnemesis, which means like the biggest nemesis, the big boss. And so I'm like, oh, cool. we're gonna like fight a bunch of these things, and there's gonna be a big boss. I'm pretty sure there's not gonna be any bosses. I think it's just rares. I think they just chose
Get you
Archnemesis
out
because it sounded cool, and because it's Nemesis 2.0. So
Yeah.
Archnemesis,
But
Nemesis.
they
2.
can't call it 2.0, right? Because
It's
that
the
would
Metamorph
admitting
thing
defeat.
again. No big Metamorph boss. No big Archnemesis boss.
I mean, they could do something where like you can have a combination of the items or whatever that spawns a boss instead of giving you like an extra bonus,
Yeah.
like some
It
recipe for
seems
spawning a guy.
It looks like
thematically-
it could happen with the statues.
Yeah,
and all
it's
that stuff.
actually.
Really
I want
cool.
the
It would be
statue to beat
cool.
me up. Yeah.
I doubt it. Though. I doubt it.
Yeah, I don't think they put in that much effort into it. Maybe if it was a different league, then yeah, but in an
Yeah.
expansion league, it's usually just kind of filler.
It's a little thing, but thematically, I like how the Arch Nemesis rares aren't. So, like in Metamorph, you were actually making a creature out of all the different bits, and if you put Innocence in there, Innocence would be part of the creature. But now the Arch Nemesis rares are like summoning Innocence as if you were some sort of stand to use him to fight you and shit like that. It's really cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
Raiz likes the league a lot more now. It's like, it's pretty good.
Ooh, the stando power. I like it.
Speaking of bosses, though, we didn't get to see too much of the new boss fights, but from what we saw, all of the arenas looked so much cleaner. I love it. It's like,
Yeah.
it was like big circle with some pillars in it, and
And it was
contrasting colors, or big circle with like 2 staircases and contrasting colors, and that's great. That's wonderful.
And it's big too. I
Oh,
hope
yeah.
that they don't do anything like they did with Uber Elder, where like it seems like you can pass through
yeah.
somewhere and you get blocked, and it's like, oh fuck, it's the most tilting thing ever. So I hope that's not going to be happening. Although, as far as visual clarity goes, there was that one attack where one of the mini bosses, I can't remember what her name was, like starts calling down some like arrows, and you're hiding behind pillars. I couldn't see shit in that. Like it looked crazy. But I'm hoping that while you're doing it, it'll be a little bit more self-explanatory.
I mean, given that they're rollable as well, I'm sure you can get them to the point
True.
where it's just screen vomit if you give them like 40% AoE and 2 extra proj and stuff.
See, that's what I was so surprised about, because when Ziggy asked during the Q&A if those bosses are like on Maven level, I'm like, well, they're rollable, so I would imagine that they're not. And Chris is like, no, they're like more powerful than Maven. But then as he kept talking, he was like, no, actually, in their base form, they're weaker. So what is it then, Chris? Like, I don't know anymore. Are they more powerful? Are they weaker? Are we supposed to scale them? I mean, we are supposed to scale them, but is it gonna...
with mods, they're gonna be more difficult than Maven.
It would make sense if they start weaker, because we don't have mini versions or like of them like we've had in the past.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
True. We do have mini versions of the other ones though.
Which ones?
But there's only 2.
But those are like more like Conqueror levels. So I mean, like A0 versus A8 was a big difference. Like Elder, white, yellow, red. What was the thing before that? Was that the
before Conquerors?
Yeah. Was that Uber? Was that
Elder
just
or
Uber?
Guardians?
Yeah, right. So it went. Yeah. So it did go Elder, Uber Elder, Conqueror. Okay.
Shaper, Elder.
Yeah.
Uber Elder.
Shaper was a
Metamorph.
I mean,
Or-
if you remember,
Maven. Like Metamorph. Arch Metamorph.
Maven morph.
There's Maven. I mean, the 10 ways were a cool idea. I'm glad that they're keeping them, to be fair.
Yeah.
Also, didn't Chris say something cool about witnessing bosses or something?
Yeah, you can witness
Yes.
Guardians and stuff.
Yeah.
The Conquerors, sorry.
Well, the Conquerors, yeah.
Yeah.
So the old ones, not the new, or maybe.
Do you reckon Cyrus is
or-
getting added into one of the old ones or something stupid like that?
That would be great. Yes, please. I want to be teleported into a maze slam while Shaper is trying to slam me, please.
Will
I'm
there
so
be
surprised
no
that
more-
just-
Sorry.
I'm so surprised they just killed Cyrus. I thought there's for sure gonna be some meme with Zana and like him being alive and them becoming lovers in a lost universe or some bullshit. Like, no, he's just dead.
She's Team Jin.
I mean,
Maybe.
I'm a little concerned that all the story stuff is positioning Zana as being our enemy in the future, because that's like it's happened
kinda hope
before.
not.
Don't do it
'Cause we-
again.
yeah.
please. Well, every character needs to betray us at some point. But then again, maybe that's a
I've never
PoE
been a big
thing.
fan of Zana, so whatever happens, I'm glad she's kind of had some time to just peace out for a
Okay.
bit. Because
You're making enemies here, Tarke.
Oh no, but she has been like the main focus for a long time. So whatever they end up doing with her in the future, I think it's kind of nice. Just gonna be like, all right, give her a little bit of time to go away. But
Are you gonna be starting developing like Diablo 3.3 or something soon, and then you're gonna kill her with butterflies? I'm worrying about your Raiz, or not Raiz, Tarke.
PoE 2, she dies to butterflies. Oh my god.
no, I've said for ages. I even spoke about this recently in the video. Raiz, if Raiz remembers, Raiz can attest to this. Before ExileCon, you were sat next to me. We were talking to Story Nick, and he's like, you know, what are you hoping to see? And I'm like, oh, I really hope we don't see like a whole thing focused all around Zana. And then the next day they launch Conquerors focused all around Zana. I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
You guys want to know the worst part about that?
Mm-hmm.
That Octavian was there too, and Tarke completely left him out in all of his stories.
What?
No.
You were literally there, Octavian.
Yeah, Octavian was there. Yeah. Yeah.
Every time he's like, Raiz was there. Raiz could attest. Octavian, nope. Don't
I'm
know
not
that guy.
trustworthy. I cannot attest.
Even more, they were sitting across from
I'm a
each other.
vicious snake of a man.
He was looking him in the eyes as he was forgetting him.
This is my favorite Octavian story from ExileCon though. The one where Octavian got really annoyed by a drunk old man trying to interrupt our conversation about Terry Pratchett. Do you remember this?
No, not specifically, actually.
Um,
Was it in the first couple days? Because I didn't sleep for about 40 hours.
okay, so
I almost walked into
making
traffic
things
and
up.
Jim.
No, this
slippery
is
Jim
true, and it's
saved me.
really funny.
Trying to save
This is
face
on the
now, I
this is
see.
on the way back. This is on the coach back from Jonathan's house at the Ultra VIP dinner. I'm talking about Terry Pratchett. David Brevik is sat behind us, and he
If he
hears
had
me
mentioned it was
talking.
him.
He hears me talk about Terry Pratchett, and he's like, "Oh, I love Terry Pratchett." He tries to join the conversation, and he was a little bit drunk. David Brevik's the guy who made Diablo 2. Octavian has no idea who this guy is, and I can see on his face he's kind of like, "Who is this drunk man interrupting my conversation?" And this goes on for the entire time we're on the coach, and then when we get off the coach, I'm like, "You know who that is, right?" He's like, "No, who's that?" I'm like, "That's the guy that made Diablo 2," and you're like, "Ooh."
I didn't say anything.
You
to the
didn't
man.
say anything, but your face, he couldn't see you because he was in the row of chairs behind. But you were like visibly annoyed that some
He can read your
random
thoughts.
old man was encroaching on your conversation about Terry Pratchett when you don't even read Terry Pratchett, which is
I'm
why I was
just-
explaining it to you.
I've read Terry Pratchett.
Have you?
Yes.
Oh, never. Oh, I forgot that
Monstrous
part.
Regiment is my favorite of his.
Okay,
But I'm just mad at myself that I never took the opportunity to say hello to goddamn fucking Brevik. Like,
Yep.
I didn't
That
know
was
who he
buggered.
was. I never said hello to the man, and I will never see him again in my life.
You don't know that.
You don't know.
Unless, wait, is he like?
No.
That sounded ominous for a second.
Oh, right.
No,
Yeah,
I just-
Octavian's gonna make sure that he never gets.
Yeah, and he
No,
never
I
sees
just
him.
don't
I'm
think
just
it'll
like,
happen.
wait a minute.
Right. Before we get into like closing thoughts, is there anything we've kind of skipped over that you want to talk about? Considering
I
we're
feel
saving
sorry.
like oh, go on.
Feels like we're forgetting something big.
I
feel
can
sorry
quickly.
for,
You have notes for this, don't you?
Yeah, I can
Party
skim through the
moderator?
notes. Okay, so Exarch, Eater of Worlds. We've talked about the boss impressions, the influence mods. We talked about Bye Bye Zana, Hello Kirak, Atlas Passive Skill Tree, Unique Ascendancy Jewels. We spoke about potential flaws and stuff with the new Atlas system. Oh, we didn't talk about the boss kill event briefly, since we have two professional racers in the call. Are you interested in the boss race event? Are you planning on getting any, whatever the prize is? They haven't said what it is.
Is it a Lost Ark boss kill event for them? Or-
Yeah, what are you asking? What the fuck?
It's what I was, you know.
I mean, 4 days is. Isn't that kind of the time it generally takes for a new boss? Isn't that around the 3-4 day mark?
It's been
I
a
mean, if-
while. Like,
Sort of.
Yeah, I
That's
feel
what
like that is the time. Yeah, I feel like that
I
is-
mean, people are killing, big bosses now in like one day. So
Yeah. I mean, Awakener was 6 because it was bugged. That's why Awakener was 6. Otherwise, that would have been like 4 as well, right? So, I mean, I feel like if it's not impossible, so there's a you know, it'll probably happen in that time. It'll be interesting. I actually, since Maven is already figured out, and the 2 new bosses are going to be probably easier than like A8, and the arenas seem to be better. I think it's going to be pretty fast.
You don't need to like kill them with mods or anything. You can just do a white version, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Presumably.
I mean, we don't know.
I mean, the
They
first
haven't
version
given
of it
any
that
info.
the first version of it that you get, you can't put mods on.
Oh,
The
yeah,
first one
yeah.
you get is a quest item. You can't trade it or put mods on it or anything.
But those aren't those just the mini bosses? And the other ones are like tier 14 and
No, I thought it was like maybe I misunderstood, but I thought the
Maybe I
first time you
didn't
did them,
either.
you were doing like a quest version of it, and then after that, sort of similar to how the 10 ways work. After that, tradable, droppable ones, or it started dropping tradable ones that you could craft on or send to other players.
I'm honestly not sure.
And the restrictions this time as well is just, I mean, as long as you're not Raiz and you remember to click the right icon, you know, seems pretty easy. Right? It's not like you're waiting for a Maven invitation. You just need to probably run red maps with the right color enough times. Yeah.
Mhm.
Or is
That's
there?
too much for me.
That's my understanding of it.
Yeah. So I feel like it's the much easier to like actually spawn them without too much hassle. So you just need to like skyrocket up with the new Atlas, which also seems great.
Mhm.
So yeah, I could see a day 2 kill. And
They
done.
do. They won,
Yeah,
but there's no DD.
Yeah, maybe.
What is
Need
like a good
DD?
skill, honestly? I don't even.
Seismic, I guess.
Seismic potentially might be good, but
mean, just-
Exsanguinate's trap got fucking wrecked.
Oh, it did.
Oh, it looks
Right.
a lot of
Explosive.
damage.
There will
Explosive
be
trap
some
is
good
quite
builds,
powerful still.
right?
I feel like explosive is going to be a significant portion of the trapping meta. A lot of people are looking at explosive
Yeah.
arrow with like ballistas
Yeah.
because it was in the gauntlet and it did get buffed, but it's kind of
squishy.
rough. Yeah, it's a little squishy and it's like rough to get through the early game quickly unless you really know the ins and outs of it. So I don't
Oh,
really
yeah.
expect it to
I
win.
think you can do that. It's just that it's squishy, and 2, it's pretty item dependent too. Even once you do have, like, you have to basically gear suppression fully, and so until then, and even if you have suppression, you're just gonna remain being quite squishy. So I don't know. It's a risky pick, but I think you can get through stuff pretty quickly with it.
Okay, quick question. Does anyone think someone that isn't Darky is going to win?
I think
Yes.
Steel can do it.
Yeah.
I have
I
faith
think
in my
there
man Steel Mage.
are like 10 people that can win.
Go on, Noogie. Boom. Come on.
10 people?
Yeah.
Darky, I'm Exile, Sis, Woggle, Lighty. I'm sure there's like Ventrua.
He said Darky, then he said Lighty. Wait a minute.
Did I say both? Oh,
It's disadvantage.
okay. Sorry.
Hold up.
Disadvantage,
Wait, they're
man.
the same person?
The same person. Yeah.
No
yeah.
throwing.
I mean-
No, quickly though. No throwing shade. Do you really think Ziz is in that same caliber?
Are you serious?
Apparently not.
When Ziz gets it on,
Of
he gets
course.
it on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you? I
think he's had a streak of bad luck or bad runs, but he pops off.
Yes, of course. If he puts his mind to this kind of thing, yes, he's one of the best bosses around. Straight up. When you look at mechanics, yes.
Okay.
So yeah, I definitely.
And he'll
think
have
so.
dad reflexes now, right? Yeah, dad
Yeah.
reflexes.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm probably forgetting people here as well. There are people that I'm not that involved in the racing scene right now, but yes, there are many capable racers, and with this, the difficulty and the with people, if people have been like practicing Atlas and all that, I think there's a lot of people that can actually take it. Havoc, yeah, Havoc is there as
Yeah.
well. Lily could pop. You know, whoever finds like the popping build, you know.
Oh,
or, like,
Lily's gonna pop, all right. We know Lily's gonna pop.
Karn? Yeah, I mean, obviously there are people who have a higher chance that are consistently showing that they perform, you know, that they can go as fast as anyone, if not faster, and you know, but they can also die. Like internet
think-
can fail and things can happen.
I think there's a lot of good players who do really well kind of in the dark with this sort of stuff. I think
Yeah,
Waggle especially was like a good name
Yeah.
to throw in there, even though he hasn't really been like doing as much. I don't know if he's going to be playing Classic or if he's going to actually play PoE. But I do find that Darky does a lot better with preparation, and without preparation, he's still the top contender. But the gap is much smaller, I think.
Hmm.
I think in this kind
for
of
versus
race,
these ones.
it's a pretty even there are definitely there are definitely favorites, but it's a wide field, I would say, of people who could actually take it.
Yeah, that's fine.
There's potential.
And again, considering it's a hardcore SSF event, there's always the chance that something drastically goes wrong, and then the guy in front gets knocked down, which is what makes these things kind of interesting. Especially since these are new bosses. Sorry, Octavian.
There's the luck of the draw to some degree with unknown mechanics, both with the new Atlas mechanics and with the League mechanic itself, as to what build you pick and how effective it's going to be.
Yep.
You know, like if you were to pick Lightning Trap in Legion, you'd have a much better time than if you were picking something like Explosive Trap. But this time around, Archnemesis seems to be more single target focused. There's more bossing, so you're going to go the Explosive Trap route. Not that those are the two options in the meta, just as examples of similar builds. So if there's some factor that we don't know about with Archnemesis, like it's really easy to kill them with chaos damage for some reason or another, it might be that someone who's just lucked into picking that build is going to have a significant advantage.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people made fun of Waggle for playing Wintertide during Harvest, but he definitely popped off on Oshabi because it was kind of like literally the perfect skill for it.
Yeah, true.
So absolutely.
Sure. Well, in that case, since we're saving the build discussion for the next Baeclast, which we'll try and put out the day before, what everyone just briefly, the one thing you're most excited for and most worried about come 317 in regards to Siege of the Atlas or Archnemesis. Does anyone want to start?
I can start, I guess. I am most excited for the new bosses because I don't know. I love the slow and scary process of learning new bosses and then eventually getting comfortable with them and then being able to put them on farm. It's one of the most fun things about the endgame and Path of Exile to me. And I'm most worried about something we touched on very early in the podcast, which is the respecking of the Atlas tree. It may be a small thing, but honestly, all the things that I'm worried about this league are small things because overall, I'd say it's a great looking expansion in League. But I do think it's going to be frustrating if those regret orbs are not very common. Maybe not very common, but like, you know, regular regret orb level of common.
I'm most excited about what I talked about at the start with the progression of the end game now, like the passive tree / the core, like the simplified core progression / the progression of the new crafting. Like that feels like it looks like a dream to me. So I'm most excited for playing around with that and seeing how it all plays out. Also seeing the passive tree, I want to see the whole thing. I don't care about seeing individual nodes. There's too much on there for me to care about seeing individual nodes. I need to see the whole thing. So I'm most worried about finding the right build to enjoy at the moment. I feel like I've been that way for a few leagues now. I've struggled to be like, what do I want to play? What am I going to enjoy? What's going to be, what's going to feel right? I don't know. I've struggled with that lately. Something about the current like character building meta.
I have it. Since you're a co-op kind of person, they fixed Triphanon, so now you can be a Triphanon support. You could put.
We did links before, and it was kind of cool. Though there was a bunch of problems with links, but
I think
it's a crit chance, pretty spicy.
I think you're ruining the spicy spice for the next one. We've had a pretty good run. It's like, last time I remember you were really conflicted. I gave you the Poison Scourge arrow shout for the Mirror Farm. That went pretty well, did it?
Yeah. That ended up being a pretty good choice.
Yeah, we'll work you out. What about you, Raiz? What are you most looking forward to and most worried about?
Probably most worried about, forgetting stuff and the micromanagement and not being able to do like multiple at once on your Atlas. What I'm most excited about? I mean, probably Lost Ark. I mean, Octavian kind of stole mine. Like he told about the bosses. I am probably most excited about the bosses. No, If do not, I mean, it's kind of a cop out. I'm most excited about GGG listening and like improving the game, honestly, because I feel like while we've been heard previously, it felt like we were heard, but we didn't really.
Wasn't demonstrated as much.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't really like experience it. We felt heard, but
Mm.
didn't experience it. Well, now they're actually like using all of these older systems and all of these systems that worked and made for the game that we, we're truly passionate about. So I'm looking forward to them kind of keeping that mentality, especially considering that, I mean, Scourge, as far as I'm concerned, was an absolute disaster right after a league where they were talking about communication, all this stuff.
Yeah.
They like, I mean, to me, it was the most disastrous thing ever. So seeing them do this, at least I know now that it was like for a good reason as to like why they treated Scourge the way that they did.
Go on, Niggy.
I am most worried about whether or not Chris pulled a fast one on us again in regards to hard mode. Okay, I just want to put this out there, Chris. Chris, I love you and your passion for hard mode, but you don't need to sell us on it early. We'll take it if it's 6 months from now, and we'll be happy about it. I can't.
I asked about it. He said like definitely end of this league or maybe next league.
And then he's like, I'm committing to definitely at this announcement of
Definitely
nesting. It's like,
maybe.
don't do it.
And just like they committed to Ultimatum this league. Huh?
Oh, the ultimatum thing really irritated me. That was one thing. This is a funny little thing. Bex might appreciate me talk about this because Chris said multiple times like, "Oh, ultimatum's coming back," and I remember it was a few days before the reveal. I was shouting to Bex, I'm like, "Oh, I'm so excited for ultimatum." She's like, "What?" And I'm like, and I thought, "Oh, she thinks that I know something I'm not meant to." I'm like, "No, it's fine. Like Chris has like announced multiple times," and she's like, "Oh." And I'm like, wait, it's not being cut. She's like, I can't talk about what's part of the announcement. And I'm like, oh, it's being cut, has it? She's like, I cannot talk about what is or isn't part of the announcement. I'm like, oh, no.
See, I kind of knew it. I was like, yeah, they're going to release it the same way they did it with Incursion, where they took a league and they were like, oh, yeah, we're going to release it after we work on it. And they just released it in the same state. I was sure that it's going to be that. Nope, I was wrong. It was worse. They're just not doing it at all. I mean, maybe it's better. Who knows?
Hopefully it comes in, because I genuinely really enjoyed Incursion and it had some great uniques as well. I think with just a couple of little tweaks, it could be such an awesome addition to the game. But
it's unique for sure. I like it.
But yeah, what I'm excited about is the Atlas. I'm really just going through that and getting the Atlas experience from start to finish and unlocking the bosses and all that. I mean, looks really cool, and it looks like I'm not going to be constantly annoyed by like the small micromanagement. Just the micromanagement being less, just it pleases me to no end whenever they remove, because PoE is such a complex game. At this point, there's so many layers, so additional micromanagement to the level we had it like 7, 8, 9 years ago, we don't need it. You can make things simpler. It's fine.
After playing a game for nearly a decade, the little things like that start to stack up and annoy you.
Absolutely.
So very
I find my
happy.
tolerance for them going down over time, like those minor annoyances. Yeah. Cutting some of that out's very good.
Yeah. I would say I'm most excited about the new influence system, because that was my main worry going into this. Because I've been really vocal about not liking influence for years. I'm like, I really hope they're not doubling down on the influence system. So when I saw like, oh, 2 new influences, I was like, no, but I think the way they're doing it is really good. And I love the fact that, for all the reasons we talked about earlier, but it retroactively buffs so many past league mechanics. Because then you're like, oh, I care about incursion items again, or I care about random delve modifiers. And I really love that aspect of it, and the fact that it's something which should hopefully be much more accessible for the average player, I think is great. Because a lot of the time when they introduce these new systems, it's something which just so few players actually really get to engage with that meaningfully. So that's something I'm super excited for. For the thing that I'm most worried about, a lot of it probably ties into the Atlas skill tree stuff, although we'll just have to wait and see with that. I think one thing which is going to be big to try and break from is the idea of speccing your Atlas for what's optimal rather than what's actually fun. So like, for example, let's say you really wanted Legion and Breach or whatever, so you route that way and you get the bosses and you got like 30 points left over. the PoE like calculator mind of you is like, oh, I must spend these 30 points as efficiently as possible. So you put them into a league mechanic you don't actually enjoy or something. And I think that's going to be a weird one to break out of. And there's going to be lots of like weird community takes on it, whichever way it goes. So yeah, I think that's what I'm probably most worried about. Oh, and to add another one, since someone else mentioned it as well, with Archnemesis, the fact that only like 2 mod items are apparently dropping per zone, that seemed really weird to me. But that could maybe be fun if it means that it feels more impactful when you actually do it. I remember, Ziggy, your reaction to that on the Q&A was a bit kind of like,
I mean, it's
I
better
like
than
it.
having to like pick up, because what would it be? How many is it? 4 or 3 of the statues that you're
You
doing?
do the fight 4 times per area, or you can.
Boy,
do
you
So
get, like,
4
2
times
per zone.
4 items, and you're picking up 16 items every map to then like put them in. Like that would be
Well, no, the
nightmarish.
current system now though is you'll be picking up 2 items per map.
2, yeah.
So it's
Yeah, but think about it. If you were picking up 16, that's
yeah,
what
if
I'm
you're
saying.
picking, yeah, but that's quite a big extreme. You've multiplied it by 8. You know?
I mean, it's the it's usually how they implement the league mechanic. You
Yeah,
get to
yeah.
interact with the league mechanic once per map. This is like not that at all. It's like
Yeah.
once every 8 maps realistically, which is pretty unusual for PoE. I mean, it's really I don't think we've ever had that, quite frankly. Like even Harvest was once per map.
Once per 8 maps?
That's a
No,
bit of
it's
an extreme value.
every other map in the beginning, and then accumulates over time as you, because like the combinations get basically reused, right? Doesn't
Yeah,
it?
you,
Or
you
am I-
generate the higher
Because
level
you
ones by using
recipes.
the lower level ones.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you.
Oh, but it's not
so,
per map.
So it's like it's less than 1 per map, but more than every other map.
It also depends on like what the strategy is going to be around it, because he did say it was filterable. So it might be a situation of like you're only picking up the premium ones. So it might take like 3 maps to get like the premium ones for whatever. But yeah, there will be like a collecting spending, which I actually quite like. I had a video where I said the thing that I like about the league the least might be what makes it the most fun. Because having that slight delay of every other map or however many maps will mean that it will be less fatiguing. Because what I often find with new leagues is it's really fun for the first week, but when you're doing it in every single zone, it gets boring really, really quickly. So that aspect of it might make it a little bit better. And also it means that each individual item is a lot more impactful, because you're actually excited when you pick up that one big one. Whereas if it was Raiz and you pick up 16 per map, then you don't care, because it's just,
Yeah, I misunderstood. I thought that it was you're inserting 16 per map, but apparently you're only inserting 4, so it's once every 2 maps.
Up to 4.
Yeah, up to 4.
Up to 4. Okay, I thought
Can
that
you
you're
put
doing
that-
like
you can-
4, then 4,
No,
and
no,
then
no,
it
no.
keeps doing
No,
the
no.
thing, and then you're combining the recipes.
Let's
Okay,
say you're
okay.
making some really
That's a lot
juiciest
simpler.
one. You could do like 2 and 2 and 2 to like make the higher ones until you have enough,
Right.
and then you can do like a bunch of juice maps. What I really like here is that it actually allows you to accumulate over time and decide when you want to do lead mechanic as well.
Yeah.
I think that's really
And,
good.
It's also like sort of adjacent to that. It's very good that it's not tradable, because otherwise people would just, in a lot of situations, I think people would get frustrated because they'd feel like, oh, it's just worth doing the low level ones, making some of the good ones, and then selling them to other people that are juicing it more.
Thank God.
And in
Yeah,
this
boy.
case, if you're making good ones, the only way you get value out of them is then by using them. So you're encouraged to engage with the higher tiers of the league mechanic.
You got to take that equation away from the player sometimes, because otherwise,
Yeah.
you just get the I'm wasting it by doing it myself.
Yeah, you can still
Problem.
then obviously
Like
sell the
it's-
results of whatever you drop.
Mhm.
You know, you drop an
Yeah.
exalt, or you drop some cool unique or whatever. You turn that into currency.
And finally about that, I also quite like, I think I'll actually quite enjoy this quite a bit. I like the fact that it's got some hidden recipe stuff, which, people might just go on like PODB to work out, but it's not an extreme case of like what we had with Scourge League, where people are like, oh, Tarke, you read through all the mods, and I'm like, why? I'm never gonna get, like, what's the point of knowing they exist if I'm never gonna get them? Whereas with this, it's something that I can actually plan around and build up to,
We've learned from Synthesis to not read all this shit, because I was the same way. I was just like, there ain't no way I'm reading that.
In Synthesis, there was more of an argument that it was kind of worth looking at it, though, because you could control the input and try and target a certain output. In Scourge, it was just, why just gamble again and gamble again and gamble again and gamble again?
Just
Like, I have no control over this. Why would I bother?
It's Scourge in a nutshell for me. Why? Just a single word.
Hmm.
Wow.
So I like having a measure of control over the input, and Archnemesis does that well, I think.
Yep. Has a little bit of Dark Shrine's energy about it, which was a great league. But on that note, we will see you all again in a couple of days to do an episode focused all around builds and possibly also Atlas skill tree advice if that's published by then. And yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. Have a good one.
I'm wiggling my head.
I thought that was very cute. Well done, Raiz.